Sababa, where life takes a spin. Join the fun, let the talk begin.
Yeah, so
smart.
welcome to Hakol Sababa. This is a special trip that I've made out to South Africa just to interview the illustrious Rabbi Gabi Bookatz. Okay, I might be lying there about both the illustrious and that I came out here especially for you.
Yeah, that's better. Thank you, illustrious. Still trying to figure out how that fits in with rabbinics.
Yeah, just a little disclaimer over here. We've been friends since like school days, so
That's right.
we have a little bit more than a passing familiarity with
Yes.
each other.
History, and we both became religious later on in our life.
Yeah,
So when we were first friends, neither of us were religious.
That's right.
So that's quite amazing.
Yes, and,
Astounding to see the growth.
Yes, and I think we'll leave out of the recording our adventures because that just would
For
not.
a fee.
So so tell us your story. What's your journey been? I mean, how much did I influence you?
Oh, a lot.
Yeah.
My personal journey in terms of spirituality, Yiddishkeit.
That.
So look, I was born here in South Africa, not a traditional Jewish family.
Mm-hmm.
We made Aliyah, passionate Zionists, and grew up on a kibbutz Dorot, right near in the south, right near Sderot.
Wow. Was that one of the?
So funnily enough, it was actually when they found when they interviewed some of the terrorists that they captured, they marked off Dorot as a kibbutz not to touch, which is
Why?
it was completely skipped over. There was one or two other kibbutzim. I don't know.
They didn't explain why they gave
Don't know.
some
And the
pass.
kibbutzim all around us were affected, and somehow my kibbutz was completely. At least I've heard no stories or incidents from friends that anything was affected, and it's a kilometer away from Sderot, so it's right there. So yeah, quite astounding. So that was my childhood, a non-religious kibbutz, and came back here to South Africa.
How old were you when you were living there?
I came back, I was 10. So this was my early childhood. And but it's the best place to grow up. I mean, for children to grow up in a kibbutz, it's like gewaldig.
Even you didn't grow up in like a children's house or something.
So
like
we
that.
do well. They were beginning to change at that period, and we had this like stayed at the kita, and you had like a dormitory with other boys. But I used to be very naughty. I used to sneak out of the window at night. We wait for the metapela to go to bed, and we used to sneak out of the window. And my mom waited for me on the other side of the kibbutz, and waited for me with a glass of milk and a cookie, like the proverbial image. And there it was. She knew I was coming home.
So she encouraged this.
Oh yeah. I couldn't be away from home.
Good. I'm glad, and that kind of squares with what I know of your mum.
Yeah, exactly. And yes, I mean, and it's for children. I believe that kibbutz childhood. It's like growing up on a farm. I mean, we had farms, we had a dairy, we had huge crops, and it's just a childhood dream. We used to walk to the school, Shara Negev, down the road. We used to. And Israel is a treasure trove of adventure and places for children.
You had a pet goat, right?
Yeah, my brother had a ram. They used to allocate, the kibbutz used to allocate, and maybe they still do, allocate a pet. They had like a pinat chai, and they had, the children would have to watch over one of the animals, and I had a goose. Used to follow me around, which was really cute, since he was a little gosling.
So is it actually imprinted on you?
Yeah. He used to follow me around. It was really cute, because he got these long summer months, and they stayed home. My brother had a ram, his name was Popeye, and he was quite vicious, but I do have childhood memories of riding on his back, holding onto his horns. I used to ram everybody. It was a vicious little thing. And eventually they decided to I don't know if somebody got hurt by Popeye, but eventually they decided to send him off to the neighboring kibbutz, Boror Chayil. It was a religious kibbutz.
Yeah.
And get him shechted. I don't know why they thought they should do that, but they did. And
look, I suppose the alternative was just to like shoot the thing in the head, and probably nobody wanted to do that. And they said, but they've got a slaughterhouse at the next place.
Yeah, so maybe it was cleaner. And it's a kosher shchita. And because my brother was in charge of little Popeye, not so little, big Popeye, we got first dibs. So my mother
Dibs
asked
on the ribs.
dibs on the ribs. So my mother asked for the shoulder of lamb. And I came home to the smell of curry. I never smelled curry in my life, but my mother growing up in South Africa, she actually schlepped out all the way to Tel Aviv to buy curry because it was going to be a delight. And I came home with the smell of, I've never smelled curry in my life. It was like, this is heaven.
Did you actually know that this was your pet that you were
No,
eating?
so we didn't know. I said, Ima, well, Mako Wepo. So she said, no, just don't ask questions, just come eat. So we're eating away, and my brother, who's 4 years older than me, says to, middle of supper, like everybody's climbing into this delicious lamb, and my brother says, Abba, why are we having this, what's the
occasion?
What's the occasion? So everybody stopped silent, and my father stopped silent, and he said, Mark, this is Popeye. He was like, what?
Oh, no.
So my brother stood up, ran out of the room, crying his eyes out, and my mother wanted to run after him, and my father said, no, don't run after him. Let him be. He needs to cry it out. He cried. A minute later, he comes back, wipes away his tears, and carries on eating.
He got over it, huh?
Yeah. The taste of the curry, you have to come back to that.
It was the least he could do for Popeye, was at least to enjoy him one last time.
We did. So that's a childhood memory. So kibbutz life is wonderful. It really is, especially. Look, we had, even in those days, in the late 70s, you had, we had security concerns, Gaza's down the road, and...
At that stage, it was under Israeli control.
Yeah, and still you had incidents. We had a curfew. We had to be back at the kibbutz. I don't know the time, 6 o'clock or something. The kibbutz was closed. Nobody in or out except for emergency vehicles. So we had Ariel Sharon. Alav Shalom was buried. His little farm thing, ranch, was down the road from us. I could actually see it from my bedroom window. And his son was in my class. What was his name? Omri, I think.
Yeah, there was Omri and there's Gilad.
Gilad, yeah. So I remember actually a funny story that I remember one time Ariel Sharon, he was then Minister of Defense. He came to fetch Omri from school. He was in my class. And we were all playing soccer at the end of the day on the top field. And this big army helicopter comes hovering over and starts landing on the kibbutz grounds. Everybody runs.
Oh, yeah.
Kids scuttle. And he opens up the sliding door and there's Ariel Sharon. Omri, yalla, olchim habayta. And Omri was like, oh, Abba, it's so embarrassing.
So embarrassing.
So
Gosh. So he didn't think this was like a cool flex. This is
really embarrassing.
No. When your parents come and turn up at school, it's bad enough your parents turn up at school to bring you home, but in a helicopter.
So that was very funny. I don't know if he was on the way picked him up on the way. Anyway, it was very funny.
Yeah.
So your childhood on a kibbutz life is absolutely magnificent, and even though it wasn't religious, I mean, my Jewish identity was instilled. A love of the land, a love of the people, growing up with Jews, and it's a remarkable sense of belonging. And also, our kibbutz was founded by Holocaust survivors, so we used to hear stories of the early establishment of the state and buying of the land, and I even remember seeing the documents, how they bought the land from
and that even stuck with you, even though you were like less than 10 years old.
Absolutely. I remember hearing stories of Holocaust survivors arriving in Israel and buying land. I don't know if it was from the Ottomans or from the British or whatever, and setting up little tents and, the beginning of the kibbutz and these old photographs. And kibbutz Dorot is still doing very well. In those days it was very socialist. I think today it's not so much. But definitely childhood's dream. I mean, get dirty, milking cows, chasing cows in the dairy, branding them. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Going out to the field. My father used to work the tractor, so he used to spend the days, summer holidays, best.
Yeah.
So that was my childhood. Came back here to South Africa.
Why did your parents decide to come back?
My parents are very kind of family people. My dad needed to be back home with his parents. And I think, kibbutz life is not so simple. especially if you grow up in South Africa. When my mother decided to finally buy a bath, nobody had a bath in the kibbutz. What do you need a bath for? You're the Queen of England, you know? So it was a whole big meeting on the kibbutz. Why do you have to have a bath? Everybody else has a shower. So it was like a shanda, you know, because my mother wanted a bath.
So it's like was it going to be like built into the bathroom?
Yeah, it was a whole big palaver.
Not like one of these baths on legs. That
yes, that's maybe what they imagined, you know. But there, I mean, the laundry was done by the kibbutz. Everything was shared, you know.
Right.
So the thought of you having a bath, I remember my cousin, a relative of ours who lived in Tel Aviv, finally bought us a color TV. Nobody had a color TV. We had a remote control, and you had to put it on black and white before any guest came into the house, because you didn't want anybody to know that the Bookatzes have got a color TV.
Oh yeah.
So we had to remove the little tag on the television that it's.
And now that you're mentioning it, I remember once your dad told me that he found that sometimes the kibbutz communality was kind of intrusive on your personal life.
Yeah, and growing up in South Africa, it's very foreign. You know, South Africans live a comfortable life.
Yeah.
Life is good. You've got a beautiful pool here, privacy, walls high. It's like, it's geweldig. So that was quite stark. My father wanted to come home, come back to South Africa. And strangely enough, that's where I became religious.
Yeah.
I found God here. Look, I've always been spiritual as a child, there's no doubt. Always had a sense of something, I don't know, a sense of the numinous, you know, like a presence of God in my life. Couldn't really put my finger on it. And then started investigating and searching, and then
was there any event that triggered you or made you like to start thinking?
Look, I started delving into some very strange places of forms of spirituality, and I realized what a farcical it was. There was no depth to it, no meaning. It was all, more often than not, it was a social experience for people. There was no real depth to it. Kind of pop spirituality, you know, pop mysticism. And then it really meant nothing. It didn't translate to anything in your life as a human being, anything practical. And then we had one religious kid in our class, you probably remember him, and Jonathan Levitt, you remember Jonathan? And we were mates, and this is after school, and he said to me, we used to often go for a drink. I said, come, let's go for a beer, we need to catch up. And he said,
what age are you talking about?
So the year after matric. And he said to me, no, it was maybe even in matric. Try to remember the year now exactly. And he said, no, I'm going to go to Shir first. I thought, Shir, you want to hear a rabbi talk. So he said, come, let's go to the Shir, and then afterwards we'll go for a drink. I said, fine. So, and I heard Rabbi Tats, and I was blown away. That was something else.
Do you remember what he was talking about?
I don't remember exactly what he was talking about, but I remember that he unpacked and he managed to articulate everything I thought about spirituality in a single shir. And what was amazing about him, and is amazing about him, is that he personifies everything he teaches. When he speaks about living a spiritual life and a non-materialistic, simple lifestyle, he lives that.
Yeah.
And that blew me away. And it was real, it was profound, but it was practical. You had to live it. And I think that for me was, And then, then I started going back to hear another shir and another shir. I started making a connection with Rabbi Tats, started going to shul. And then eventually he said to me, Rabbi Tats said to me, listen, you can't remain an Am Haaretz for the rest of your life. You know, you're enjoying this, but now you need to properly learn.
Yeah.
So, and then I was introduced to Rabbi Goldfein Zatzal.
Who introduced you?
It's actually Rabbi Furman, because I used to come here to Waverley Shul, which is amazing. The circle works out, because now I'm the Rabbi of Waverley Shul.
Yes.
And it's weird. And I've sort of become very close to Rabbi Furman. He actually was Masarid Kedushin at my wedding. And Rabbi Furman also, he said, like, you're growing, you're amazing, you're wanting to learn, but you can't remain Am Haaretz. You know, you need to know what it really means to be a Jew. So he said, come, Sunday morning, put me in his car, took me to Rabbi Goldfein, I was completely bowled over by Rabbi Goldfein. Looks like an accountant, clean shaven, dressed.
So hang on, where's the Rosh Hashiva?
Yeah, where's the Rosh Hashiva? Yeah. But dressed immaculately and spoke immaculately with most phenomenal respect and dignity and the depth of thought. He asked me a few questions and he said, come try it out. Come try it out. And that was it. I was completely blown away, with the depth of intellectual veracity of proper Torah learning and the integration, the integrity, I guess, of proper Yiddishkeit. That, and especially in our yeshiva that both of us were privileged to learn in.
And as a matter of fact, you were the one who introduced me to Rabbi Goldfein.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I don't even remember that.
That's right. Because at the time when I was going through my my discovery of Yiddishkeit, you were my friend who had gone over to the other side. I don't remember exactly how, but you said, come to the yeshiva, come and try it out and whatever. So
that's amazing.
So while I was at university at the time, I was in my third year or fourth year of I probably started coming to the public shiurim already in third year. And that was because you said, no, you must come and listen, you must come and try these things out. And it was I was also sold.
Yeah, I think that blew me away. The intellectual veracity, the integrity of the man, the intellectual honesty, because you see, he didn't take stupid answers. Superficiality failed miserably in front of him, and he wasn't impressed with perception, with outlook. What people look like. Yeah. And I'll tell you a funny story. Yeah. You maybe even remember it. So one of our chevra in the yeshiva was very close to Rabbi Goldfein, and Rabbi Goldfein had a wedding in the observatory shul, and Gidon, our friend Gidon. So he asked Gidon, can he take him to this wedding, chuppah in observatory shul? And Gidon said, Gabi, come with me. We'll take Rosh Hashiva to a wedding with chuppah. So we went there and we escorted the Rosh Hashiva, and we were sitting down in this big communal type shul, and the chuppah is about to start. So everybody's sitting together in the shul and waiting for the chuppah to begin, and the place was packed. So there were no more spare seats. And these two youngsters walked in from the back. I recognized them, two young guys, Lubavitch boys with a nice beautiful beard and a hat, looking nice and yeshivish. But they were complete ignoramuses. And they were looking for a place to sit. No issues. They were looking for a place to sit. And this elderly lady from behind us tapped Rabbi Goldfein on the shoulder, and she said to him, don't you think you should let the rabbi sit down? Oh no! I was about to return with a finger and about to put this woman in place. And Rabbi Goldfein saw it, and he put my hand down, and he said, gentlemen, come. And we stood up and we moved away. And he let these two youngsters sit down. And that for me was so indicative. Rabbi Goldfein made no fuss. He was a enormous Talmid Chacham, Messiah of the greatest of the yeshivas.
That is mind-blowing.
And he wasn't affronted. I was offended for my Rosh Hashiva, for his dignity. For him it was nothing. It was, of course, these two youngsters need to sit.
Gee.
So there was a funny memory, but that kind of impression, they make such an impact on you. And then you kind of go back and say, okay, now I understand why he's my Rosh Hashiva. Yeah. That's my Rebbe,
Yeah, wow.
And his intellectual honesty, his veracity, you could ask him a question, and he was just a remarkable human being on every level. So I stayed there for a good 5.5 years, and met my wife, and then carried on learning in Kollel with Rabbi Arbach. Also, just started off there Kollel, and our good friend Jared Garber joined us. It was great, and we did smicha together there, and
hang on, you also came to Israel to get your smicha.
Yes, we stayed at your place. That's right. That was a lot of fun.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that there are two things that really stuck with me from that visit when you and Jared came to stay with me. One was Jared spending the entire free time playing with the Boomer Tower. There's a little magnet game that my kids played with.
Yes.
he was just spending the entire time making little structures out of these magnets. But that wasn't the important part. But I remember I gave you a ride into Mea Sharim.
I remember.
And you were going to visit
the Ma'adana Shulchan.
That's
the
right,
author of the Ma'adana Shulchan.
That's right. And he at Rav Tanzer.
Yes, Rav Baruch Tanzer's kollel.
Right. So we were driving into Mea Sharim, and it was like getting really close to Shkia.
That's right.
And of course, there's nowhere to park. And I was like starting to get like really nervous about this. The timing. Eventually, we found a spot somewhere, and I don't know, on a pavement or whatever. We just fetched a parking space, charged in like just before Shkia. They were already davening in this kollel, stepping in, stepping out, and like before okay, we in the Shemona Esrei, and like now I'm sort of looking around and like. Head is nowhere in the Shemona Esrei, and I look around and I see all these people, in the stripy coats and the black coats and the long beards and the payers and
and us there in our coloured shirts.
I think I was in track pants, and
mistakenly I was using the Rosh Hashiva stender.
No, you weren't.
Or one of the Ramim, maybe it was the Rosh Hashiva or the Ramim. And they made no fuss of it. They stood next to me.
I was sitting there in my Shemona Esrei, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what have I just walked into? Like, are they actually going to like take me and physically throw me out and I think I'm a goy? What's actually going to happen? Like it's like okay, focus, Shemona Esrei. It's like I was like thinking, oh my gosh, I feel like such a fish out of water over here, and finished mincha, and every single member of that kollel came up to give us like the warmest handshakes ever.
Everybody greeted us.
Greeted us, and like,
and then when we met, on Ma'adana Shulchan, Jared asked him for a copy, and he didn't have any space, so he gave Jared his own personal copy, and that's what he sold him with his own notes. Gabi still got it.
Ooh, yes.
And that's quite amazing. It's I just thought like that's Yiddishkeit for you, I mean, I hear very many stories like in our shul. I heard we had a shiva a few years ago, and I went to Menachem Avel, one of the members of our shul. A woman lost her father, also became religious later on in life. And I said to her, like, I never met the father. I know her well and I know the family. So I said, like, what made your dad religious? She said she remembers her father was very spiritual, always, his whole life, and was very involved in Eastern religion, very spiritual and very Eastern spirituality, etc. And then one day he needed to, but still had a Jewish connection. He needed to say Kaddish for his parents or somebody, and he went to shul somewhere in Yovel, and the rabbi gave a shiur between Mincha and Mariv about, must have been a sugi and Eilu Metzius, about Hashavas Aveda. And he thought to himself, here's this balabos who's been involved in Eastern spirituality his whole life, very spiritual, considered himself very spiritual. And he thought to himself, my goodness, of all that I've experienced and I've learned in Eastern religion, they never speak about your responsibility to other people's property. And here, the rabbi is saying that there's a mitzvah in the Torah to return somebody's lost items.
Yeah.
And he thought, my goodness, this, like, where's the ethical imperative in Eastern spirituality? And that made him very curious. And the more he started learning, went back to that rabbi, and went back, and that's what made him religious.
It's interesting. That's not the first story I've heard of somebody who became from through Eile Matthias. It's like, so there was another story. I think it was published in a book somewhere about somebody who went the other direction. Like they were about to go off to some ashram in India or something, and somebody convinced them to go to a shiur, and it was about Eile Matthias and like Hashava Saveda, and she's like, this is kind of boring, and she went off to India and studied all of the spirituality and was getting very into the whole thing. And one day she was like out walking with a guru, and they found and she spotted a lost wallet. Somebody dropped a wallet, so she bent over, picked it up, and she said, we should probably replace it. And the guru was saying, no, God wants it to be yours.
Oh, I see.
And she said, no, but she opened it up, and there's somebody's name inside here. And he said, some very pithy
karma
thing about
dictates.
Karma dictates, yes. And, the materials move with the flow of whatever. And she's like saying, no, this belongs to somebody else. And and she's like thinking back to her shiur of Hashava Saveda, and thought, something? I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me what Rav Kook writes in a letter. I think it was, I was trying to think which letter it was. Rav Kook writes about the fact when he talks to Mechanchim. And he says, when you're teaching, he says, don't put too much emphasis, don't be stressed out about trying to prove the divinity of the Torah. Yeah. He says, that's not what's going to makarev people. He says, you want to makarev the youth?
Yeah.
Tell them about the ethics of Yiddishkeit.
Yeah.
When they see the objective morality of the Torah, and they see the difference it makes in their life, in the life of society. And he's right. And it's the stories like that.
Yeah.
It makes all the difference.
Yeah.
So that made it a big impression on me. Rabbi Goldfein personified that. And Rabbi Tatz personified that. I remember when to visit, he had a flat in Yeovil. I had to talk to him about something private. And I couldn't believe it. He had a trestle table with plastic chairs around. The walls were decorated with forum. And he lived a simple life. When he spoke about living a simple life, he meant it. He didn't mean it, he lived it.
Yeah.
It was. Then when you read the lives of the Gedolim, that's how they lived. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, the big tzaddikim of our generation, that's how they lived.
Yeah.
Real.
And I think you've touched on a really significant point there. That there are. Some people do find their way into Yiddishkeit through intellectual pursuits and through proofs and whatever. And honestly, I'm one of those who I found my way in because I'm that kind of intensely head kind of person, and I need to be convinced and whatever. So like I did need to see like evidence, but honestly, that kind of stuff doesn't last. Because the more you think about things like this, about psychology, and you realize that there's so many different cognitive biases at work when you're making up your mind about confirmation bias, cognitive dissonance, all these things that will convince you of whatever you want to be convinced of.
Yeah.
But I think what ultimately makes things stick is actually being in a lifestyle that works, that's wholesome and good, and just speaking for me personally, like every time I've had a little wobble on my road, it's almost invariably been because of the way I've seen from people behaving.
Yes.
That's like a common story that I hear from other people. It's like how can I be part of a society that where the so-called frum people are behaving like this without going into whatever the details are, and I mean sometimes it came down to the things like me recentering myself and saying, hold on a second, I'm a Talmud of Rabbi Goldfein. And I hold this picture of Rabbi Goldfein in my eyes, like Yosef looking and seeing the
image of his father,
and say, Rabbi Goldfein he's the example of that,
Yes.
that I'm living up to. And like, I don't care if there are other idiots out there who claim to be representing Judaism. Let me have some more of that, thank you. If there are other idiots out there who claim to be representing Judaism and act like Schmendricks.
Yeah.
So, but this is the real deal. This is the real deal. The people who are actually...
And it's that cognitive bias that guides our actions more than we want to give it credit to. And my father told me a great story that when he was working in Pretoria, so my father became religious later in his life, and he was working in Pretoria, and he was probably the only Jew for 100 miles, never mind the only from Jew. Mm-hmm. So he was working, and then this guy sees him with the yami on his head, comes up, some gentleman comes up to him, he says to him, "Oh, you Jewish?" So my dad said, "Yes." He says, "Ah, I don't like from Jews." So like, thanks. Well, that's a lovely conversation starter.
Did he use the word from? Or,
yeah, he says, "I don't like from Jews."
So
obviously he's a Jew.
He's a Jew, obviously. He's using that term, yeah.
And he sees my dad's yami and he says, "I don't like from Jews." So my dad said, "Well, thanks. That's charming. You don't even know who I am. We haven't even exchanged names yet. You already made a judgment." So he says, so my dad says to him, "Why do you say that?" He says, "No, one time it happened. It's exactly what you're saying."
Yeah.
He says, "I saw a religious man hit his wife in public."
Ooh.
So that's despicable. My dad was horrified. Like, that's awful. I mean, like, there's nothing anywhere in the Torah that would justify such behavior. That's absolutely despicable. So my dad says to him, "Do you know any other religious Jews?" He says, "Yeah, I'm actually quite good friends with Rabbi Tat."
And you chose to judge him on that one?
Exactly. So that's exactly what my dad said. Like, here you are, you've got this absolute angel of a human being who's an exemplary member of the Jewish people in mind and heart, and you choose that Shmendrik as the example of what it means to be a Jew. Like, really? Because that's your cognitive bias, is that really you're looking for an excuse.
Yeah.
So the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says that minus mashche, there's a Yetzer Hara for minus. Mm-hmm. You're looking for excuses, to weigh out, and it's an excuse. Really, the guy wants out. This is just an excuse.
Right.
And we choose. And I think that we as religious Jews don't quite appreciate how it's those things that make such a powerful impression. I've seen that in rabbinics.
Yeah.
I spent so much time preparing a good drosha, and if I could say, I could proud of myself for giving good quality droshas and shiurim, and that's why I invest so much time in preparing that. And yet it's just a visit to somebody's house while they're recovering from an operation, that's what makes them, that's what changes their life. With all the droshas that you've given, it's that visit.
That's fun. That's
it's the nichum avelim. It's the warm greeting that you greeted somebody, and those are the things that they remember, and that's what changes their life.
Responsibility. Just give me the makor for this. I don't have it off the top of my head, but like when a Talmid Chacham behaves in a way that says, Ashrei Zeh Shelimed is Benot Torah, or whatever.
Yeah. It's a Gemara in Yuma. What's it?
Yeah, I thought it was Yuma. This is like the definition of Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem is.
That's how you become the mitzvah of Ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. To love Hashem your God means to make a name of Hashem beloved in the mouths of others.
So it wasn't talking about Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem.
So there the Rambam extends it through to Kiddush Hashem. And he takes it even further. When he's right, the Rambam says that by Talmid Chacham, he's got extra standards.
Yeah.
So he has to be, he has to speak well with people. He has to be beloved by the community. He can't even buy on credit. You can't have any schmutz on his. I'll tell you a story, talking about schmutz on your shirt. Story, the guys from Rabbi Gabi Bookatz will appreciate. I remember we had an afternoon break, lunch break, so come back for afternoon Seder. And I had a bit of schmutz on my shirt, probably below the shot of my eyes, I couldn't see it. And I come back to afternoon Seder, and Rabbi Goldfein sees it, he says, "Gabi, you've got some little schmutz on the shirt." I go, "Oi, Gavalt, you're right." He says, "Oh, so you'll change that?" I said, yeah, I'll change it. He said, "No, now." I said, "We just had lunch break. Like, I'm just sat down and learn." He said, No. A Ben Torah can't have a schmutz on his shirt. Go change it now. And that made such an impression on me. I had to go change. It's such an impression that if you're a Ben Torah, there's higher standards. And that's what the Rambam's talking about. You can't even mine credit. I mean, the world runs on credit. That's how economies grow.
So does that mean you're not allowed to own a credit card?
And the Rambam says, like, the Talmid Chacham has to pay up immediately. Look, obviously, social, economic norms to pay with a credit card or whatever, you've got a credit agreement with a business. But the Rambam is speaking about the sensitivity that's a Talmid Chacham is required to have, because he's an exemplary person. He's a dugma.
I think what the Rambam's talking about there, I mean, I haven't learned this Rambam, but it's like in a society where you are borrowing directly from the store owner. Like he's extending you a line of credit, and you're putting yourself in a precarious position, because if you fail to pay on time, oy vavoy.
Yeah. Absolutely, it affects him. It affects you. It affects
and then the shopkeeper says the rabbi doesn't pay on time.
Yeah. It's huge.
The bank, they're quite happy if you don't pay on time.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, economic norms have to be put aside, but the fact that the Rambam expects a higher standard of behavior from a Talmid Chacham. I always say, thank goodness I'm not a Talmid Chacham. Imagine. Did I think, like he starts? I deliberately didn't finish that daf. I didn't want to do a siyum on that masechta because, what I'd be expected to learn.
Adding an extra weight of responsibility.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But and it's an amazing thing, because those are the things. I mean, of all the shurim and all the learning that I did, I was privileged to learn under Rabbi Goldfein. It's those moments like that made such an impression.
Yeah.
I mean, think about our school days. How many times, and the hours and hours we learn from a particular teacher. And yet, it's that one time that he or she took time out to listen to you and give you attention. That's what made the impression. Yeah. And that's how you remember her. You know, because she listened to me when I was upset, or she gave me another opportunity. Like, wow. Teachers don't realize, Rebbeim don't realize. We don't, as human beings. There's these things that make a difference.
And as parents, it's...
huge. Tell you another sweet masa that happened. We were going on holiday once with a family, and we were... this is in the old days where toll roads were cheap. Now they're more expensive. And I think the toll to get into the toll gate was like 8 Rand or something. And I was driving, and my wife handed me 2 5 Rand coins. And I didn't even look. I just took these 2 5 Rand coins, gave it to the lady, and she just put something back in my hand, and I was driving off, gave the money back to my wife, and I drove off. And she says, wait, she just gave us our money back. So obviously the lady wasn't paying attention. So I said, pull over. So I quickly pulled over, and I ran through the traffic back to the lady. I said, ma'am, you just gave me my money back, and I just need 2 Rand change. She said, I noticed after you left, but I knew you'd come back.
Boom.
I said, why? She said, you had that thing on your head. She said, I knew you were a Jew, and Jews come back.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, that's unbelievable. It must mean that some Jew before me made that impression.
Yeah, that's. I had a similar experience once in New York. I went into some grocery store or whatever, and I had a bag full of groceries, and the cashier rang everything up, and she said, okay, that will be X number of dollars. And I looked at her and I said, no, something's wrong over there. You've undercharged me. Oh. You haven't counted something. And she said, what? So no, go through the list over there. Let's see. And she had forgotten to charge me for one item over there. She's like, whoa, you didn't, like, you saw.
Yeah. I said, how would you see that?
I said, what are you talking about? How could I walk out of here without paying for something?
Yeah.
It's like, that's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
And like, for so many people, that's like, it just like blows their mind that that's
absolutely. And I think that says a lot about what Yiddishkeit is about, people seeking Yiddishkeit, seeking God out there, but really God is to be found here in the real world, between people and politics and family and marriage. Yeah, absolutely. How you treat other people's property.
Is that the reason why that's like the first perek that you always teach children tomorrow?
Maybe. I thought it's always just a nice introduction to technicalities.
I mean, it is, and it's like, you get to know Yael Kagam. And
Yeah. So, it's interesting. Maybe there's also a Minnesota that you should start teaching your children Vayikra, Korbanos, when you start learning Chumash with children.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the same thing. That's the heart of Torah, is the Korbanos.
Why is the Korbanos the heart of Torah?
That's a good question. I think for us today in the 21st century, a very difficult thing to relate
Yeah.
to. I mean, the thought of killing an animal. I mean, so many people today in the 21st century fear the thought of even touching an animal, never mind. How many people today actually own pets, you know? So to try and put yourself back in a life where people lived in an environment where animals were an integral part of one's life. Now your whole wealth, your property, everything is this herd. So now you're making a korban. So very foreign for us, very difficult for us to relate to. But I think it's the essence of Torah, because it's about the relationship we have with God. I think a lot of people struggle with the whole notion of, I think even religious people, if I could be so bold, struggle with the notion of having actually a relationship with God. You know, there's a difference between spirituality and religiosity. I mean, I've experienced with my own life. I do a lot of work, I mean, maybe you know, but I do a lot of work with rehab and recovery from alcoholism with the non-Jewish community within the Jewish. Okay.
I did not know that.
With the non-Jewish
I think we're going
community.
to talk about that later.
Okay. And the Jewish community, I do a lot of work. And I've met non-Jewish people. I mean, in AA meetings, you see and experience spirituality, which is rare, even in the religious world. Very rare. And beautiful. I mean, it's like you see real closeness to God. People who, you know, somebody said once that religion is for people who want to go to heaven, and spirituality is for people who've been through hell. And it's profoundly true, and I've seen it. I've seen it in my life, in the lives of others, and it's a profound thing.
What is the difference?
Spirituality is about expansion of oneself. It's about connecting to the divine and having an intimate relationship with the divine. And it means that you have to expand your ego. You have to embrace things bigger than outside of yourself. Religion is often very much ego-driven. Like you see people who are, and you see it manifest, like you'll see often people who grow in their religiosity but not in their spirituality are often more judgmental. They're more harsh. They're more precise, not only with themselves but with others. And it becomes often very political, it's very politicized. Religion becomes politicized. Spirituality, the more a person grows spiritually, the more humble they become more forgiving. I mean, I'll tell you that in the world of recovery, it's often the best place in the world. In the rooms of AA, for example, one of the most amazing things about alcoholics, recovering alcoholics, that people are still in the battlefield, are people that's difficult. But people who are in the recovery process, they're often the best people in the world. And because one of the things that makes them so beautiful is that they're least judgmental people in the world. You can walk into the room, I've heard people confess things, heart-wrenching things that you be terrified to hear in any other context. But you hear it in the rooms of AA, and you just feel the support and the love that people exude. There's no judgment.
So do you think that somebody needs to go through a trauma to...
It's a very good question. It's a very good question. It's a tragic question. Does a person have to go through a trauma in order to properly spiritually grow? You know, the unfortunate reality of life is that often marriages, for example, it's just an example, it could be other things, that often marriages have to get rocky before they're able to have the courage to seek support.
Yeah.
And then the marriage all of a sudden begins to blossom. A person's health has to become very precarious before they have the courage to now go to the doctor and get advice. Or person's finances has to become really, really dangerous before all of a sudden they start becoming responsible financially. And so it is with their relationship with God. And it's tragic. You know, why is it that you have to wait until the person is on death's door? I know people that have found God because they were literally on death's door. And all of a sudden, they turned to God out of complete desperation.
Yeah.
You know, like Menashe. And God stepped in. And I think the most miraculous stories you would not believe. Astounding. I'll tell you a story. A gentleman, I heard a story recently, a guy told a story. He was up here in Joburg with his son. He went out camping with his mates. He got so drunk. I mean, it's a ludicrous story. It's a completely crazy story. And he's been an alcoholic, a raging alcoholic for about 10, 12 years. Completely destructive. And he got heavily intoxicated and eventually decided to, got some, as they say in Israel, a joke in the head, decided to go to Durban, put his son in the car, drove all the way to Durban, it was a 7 hour drive down to Durban, and blacked out. He was blacked out he was drinking the whole way with his son in the car.
His son is how old?
I don't know how old the child was at the time. He arrived in Durban, had no recollection, so he was drinking the entire way. Yeah, can you hear how horrific the story is? And throughout his life, he's been hearing messages from his doctor, to his wife, from his children, from his friends: stop drinking, you need to get help, get help, go to recovery, go to AA, whatever. He wasn't interested. He thought everybody's trying to control him and trying to dictate and ruin his life, blah, blah, blah.
He didn't think it was a problem.
No. Well, that's the problem. You know, alcoholism is one of the few diseases in the world that convinces you don't have it. It's like, that's one of the symptoms of the disease, is to convince yourself you don't have it. So, which is like out of the life of Brian, you know, only the true Messiah denies its validity.
But I mean, I can imagine, like, I don't have like an in-depth understanding of addictions, but I mean, there's some addictions where, like, even if you know that this is bad for you and it's the wrong thing, but you still go ahead and do it.
You can't process it. I mean, there's a lot of research scientifically is exactly what's going on in the brain, and social reasons and psychological reasons, childhood reasons, and you know. Yeah. So there's a lot of research. I'm happy to share that with you. But the story. So here's this guy. For years he's been told by his boss fired him, and everybody's telling him his life is going to ruins. He's going to fall off this cliff, and he's running headlong towards this cliff. And he arrives in Durban with his child. He falls asleep. He wakes up the next morning, has no idea where he is, because he's been blacking out for the last... You know, blacking out is when a person has so much alcohol, there's so much alcohol in the system, that the amygdala, the part of the brain that processes memory, is shut down. So that's why a person has no recollection. So it means that also the person's not thinking consciously as well.
Right.
The person's not, I mean, never mind, the frontal cortex is shut down.
So this is just like brainstem driving.
Yeah, it's like madness. It's complete, yeah, it's a zombie, you know, and arrives, wakes up in the morning in Durban, astounded at the thought of where is he, and with his son, and he finds out that he's in Durban. He thinks, like, how the hell did he get here? And his son proceeds to tell him the whole story. He was so ashamed, he was so horrified, he was so sickened by his own behavior that he turned and he said, God, if you are out there, this is for chutzpah, if you are out there, like everybody says, please come help me now. I can't live like this anymore. He says to me, and I kid you not, at that moment, his craving for alcohol disappeared. For the first time in 20 years. Kacha. It's a poshut miracle. His craving for alcohol stopped that moment. He started going to rehab, he went to detox, went through the process, and he still attends weekly AA meetings. He's an active participant, non-Jewish guy, covered in tattoos, this big buffer guy, absolutely terrifying as hell, and yet the sweetest soul you'd ever meet. And that's what it is.
Wow.
It's a remarkable thing. So I've seen, and a guy who's so connected to God, he's, you know, one of the things that we say in AA is that we talk about the God of your understanding. So however you want to understand, you from a Jewish perspective, Christian, you know, that's like whatever, you understand. You talk about nature, you don't talk about your moral conscience, you know, like Socrates' understanding of God, go for it, whatever. But connect to it. It's the numinos. It's the something. It's the presence of the divine, presence of something sacred in your life, and you feel it. And that's when you bring it and integrate it into your life, and you have a proper relationship. That's the beginning of spirituality. The truth is, the Torah was given to Klal Yisrael as a path of spirituality.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it became a religion, in the sense that I even remember the Rosh Hashivas Zatzal used to say to us that Yiddishkeit is not a religion. Torah is not. I couldn't understand what do you mean. Torah is not a religion. It says Torah's Chaim. It's a Torah of love. It tells you how you wake up in the morning. It guides you how you conduct yourself in business and how you eat and how who you marry.
So dive into that for a second. Like, what does it mean that it's not a religion? What if it were a religion? What would it be, and what is it?
Well, number one, it would be very ego-centered. It would be talking to people's egos. It would be very politicized. When religion becomes politicized.
Put some flesh on this. What are we talking about?
Well, I don't want to get controversial, but we've seen it, unfortunately, with with communities and individuals who use their religion or use their Jewish identity or their as a political tool, either to achieve political ends within the Israeli government. We've seen that. Or within a particular community, and we've seen Rabbonim use it to extort money or whatever, sexual favors. We've seen it, corruption, and then the religion becomes a political tool to leverage one's personal agenda to gain wealth. Then the religion, then Yiddishkeit's it's not a path of spirituality. The path of spirituality is when a person, the more they grow in their Yiddishkeit and the more they learn and the more they perform. First of all, the Mission Pirkei says you should focus more on performance than learning. So the fact that you have to do more than you learn, well, that already tells you that this is not about ideas.
Yeah.
This is about how you live. Ideas are not really the issue here. God is not found in ideas. God is found in helping that old lady cross the road.
So I want to just interject over here a little insight that I had, and I want to hear what your thinking is on this. So it's often said that learning Torah, helps you to perfect your midas. And I used to hear this and think, okay, there's some mystical thing that happens that
magical.
It's a magical thing. It's a magical thing that immersing yourself in the mind of God and all this, all this Torah learning is, it has this sort of magical. It rubs off on you because it's from a holy source and whatever. And I thought, something. I've got a very rational explanation for this. Okay, what's in the Gemara? Gemara is Abaye says, Rava says, and they argue with each other, and we paskin halacha like Rava. Okay, most of the time, and yet we're still learning Abaye's opinion.
That's very important.
And if you didn't understand Abaye's opinion, if you didn't understand his argument, you haven't understood the Gemara,
and therefore you don't understand Rava.
Therefore, you don't understand Rava.
That's right.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. And this is such a marked contrast to your modern soundbite zinger kind of debate where I've got you there
and I think that's one of finish.
Yeah. And I'll explain further why this explains why you paskin halacha like Beis Hillel.
That's right. The Gemara says
because Beis Hillel put the words of Beis Shammai before their own words. Now that's just not about being deferential. It's not about being nice and saying, well, I'll say you before
common
me.
Courtesy.
It's because they understood Beis Shammai.
Yes.
They took the trouble to understand Beis Shammai's opinion, and then they still
disagreed.
And they still disagreed,
right.
Which means they understood both positions and they still held by their thing.
Right.
Whereas Beis Shammai is just saying their own opinion. So okay, that's great that you understood your own opinion, or did you? But
what are you really arguing?
If you didn't trap that, so why is Beis Hillel the halacha? Is because they understood both sides and they still said this way.
And I always found myself that part of that when the Gemara says that they quoted the opinion of Beis Shammai before their own, is that means that Beis Shammai heard it, and they would have the opportunity to say no, that's not what we meant.
Yeah.
Or yes, exactly. Or no, what we meant was ABC, and then Beis Hillel will go, so what you said, like, and only once Beis Shammai was happy that Beis Hillel chapped their view, that's then Beis Hillel would, and
that's like that intellectual honesty.
Yes.
And that rubs off. If you're sitting there and trying to understand both perspectives, that's the kind of character that you have to have, is not to be so like dogmatic about your own opinions. I've made up my mind, and this is the truth, and I don't care what you've got. You've got to care what the other person's got to say.
Right, that's religion. So one of the things that you see with religion versus spirituality is that religious people, meaning
dogmatic.
that people are dogmatic, they're only interested about being heard, not listening. That's a major thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got other thoughts about tefillah as well, but that when they get into debate, they're not really interested in learning, using the debate as an opportunity to learn and grow, but they're using the opportunity to win.
Right.
It's a contest. And that's not why we debate. You learn Gemara when there's machlokas, whether it's in the Mishnah to the Gemara to machlokas Rishonim or Achronim, you're learning it in order to understand, not in order to. I remember one time I asked Rabbi Goldfein, I was learning Hilchos Shabbos once, and I came down to a machlokas between the Mishnah Berurah and Aruch HaShulchan on a certain matter. I can't even remember what the topic was, but I remember I came to this loggerhead, and I came to him and I said to him, like, well, what do I do? So he says, no. So what you do now is go back to the sources, go back from the Gemara to the Rishonim, to the background, and eventually you've got to make up your own mind which of the two is the most sound opinion for you. So that's profound. So I think that's another major thing. By the way, this is what you're saying is one of the reasons why we had such antagonism in Jewish history towards Kitzur Sforim. I mean, why was the Rambam, even the Rif was controversial.
Yeah.
Why was the Rambam controversial? Is because he summarized the Gemara. Why was the Shulchan Aruch so controversial? Same thing. Because now you don't have to do the dirty work of actually going through the Shakla and Vataria and understanding the diverse opinions.
It's a symptom of Yeridus Adoros.
Yes. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons, apart from others, that the Rambam was so controversial. The Rif was controversial when he wrote his halachas, and why today Kitzur Sforim was so controversial. Rabbi Goldfein couldn't stand Kitzur Sforim, didn't stand them. He says, I would rather, he said, told us straight, I would rather you learn through the sugya properly, from the Gemara to the Rishonim, and come out to the wrong answer, than actually come to the right answer because you look up some Kitzur Sefer. Because you understand the matter much more. I think that's very profound. But going back to the issue, is what you're mentioning is a very important thing, is about the capacity to listen. That's one of the other marked differences. True spirituality is about wanting to learn and wanting to grow. That's what the Mishnah Pirkei Avos, Aloimed Mikol Adam. Rav Chaim of Volozhin learns that the whole Mishnah there is about humility. And that's a monumental explanation of Chaim Volozhin's explanation on that Mishnah about humility. And there, it's very clear that true spiritual growth comes from the desire to learn. And the desire to learn is not only learning because you want the information, but desire to grow. And that means if somebody gives you criticism, as painful as that might be, you actually want to hear it. You're actually grateful for it, because how else am I going to grow?
Yeah.
And I'll consider it. I might disagree with him, I might agree with him, but I need to hear criticism. It's Mishlei says, what's it? Ohev tochochos koine lev. As opposed to paro in these week's parashas.
Yeah. I've been working on this in myself. It's like when somebody gives me a criticism, instead of like the natural impulse is to be defensive, but you got to say, somebody just gave me a gift, like ka-ching! I just got this big gift from somebody who helped me to do something. And even if I decide to reject it, it's like somebody cared enough to tell me something, and okay.
But at least process it. You don't have to agree with it at the end. Let me think about it. Is there any truth to what they're saying? Let me think about it. Let me consult with somebody else. Best person always to talk to is your wife. And she'll tell you if they're on the mark or not. And if they are, well, now you know where you need to grow. Religious people who take Torah as a religion, they don't want to hear it. It's the last thing they want to hear, Another manifestation of real spirituality is tefillah. And that is, Rav Soloveitchik Zatzal used to say that people want to have daven. They don't want to daven. You know, it's like on the tick box,
yes.
You want to tick it off. The things that you have to do today. Laundry, go to the bank, mincha, mariv, you know, it's like the things to do today. So, and they're quite relieved when they've ticked that
like
box.
I heard it said in a sort of joking way that like Litvish Nachas is Shabbos afternoon. When you've like if you washed for the kiddush and you washed for lunch and you've davened mincha, it's like.
yes.
No.
And the truth is that Rav Gifter, I saw in that biography, Oscar came out with a fantastic biography on Rav Gifter's life.
Yeah.
And he said there that he used to ask his Talmidim, what's the most important word in a bracha? He said the word atah.
Yeah.
The realization that when you're saying a bracha, you're talking directly to the creator of the universe. You know, and that feeling of a relationship with God, and therefore you have got, whether 45 minutes for Shachris or whatever you allocate that time, when you dedicate that time to stand before the creator of the universe and just connect and just bond and feel that he's listening to you. Rav Kook says a beautiful thing, that the relationship between Torah and Tefillah in his Ein Ayah, it's a spectacular parish on Gemara Brachas, on the Agaditzas. So the Rav Kook writes, he says, the person should rise out of, and it said, Ein Adam Oimed Ele Le'Spalal Ele Mimakom Torah. I can't remember the Lashon. You should learn to stand up to davening from a place of learning. He says, what's the relation between learning and tefillah? He says, because when you're learning, Kadosh Baruch Hu is talking to you and you're listening. That's what it is. But when you're davening, you're talking and he's listening. But the capacity for him to listen to you while you're talking is dependent on your ability to listen to him when he's talking. That means that when you're learning Gemara or Parsha, Musa, Halacha, whatever you're learning, Halacha for me is the most critical, in my personal opinion, because that's the ultimate Musa there is in the world, is Halacha. And that's
when you say learning halacha, I mean, I'm just going to go back to like, are you learning from a kitzur?
No, that's
what you're learning
halacha
from.
I mean, my personal favorite, I'm sure you've heard this before. For me, the Tu Beis Yosef is my all-time best favorite book of halachic work of all time, is the Tu Beis Yosef, because he just does all the dirty work for you. The Beis Yosef, he just he puts you in the heart. He's done all the hard work, and he's like, this is the result of my research, it's just, and it's magic. And so when you're learning halacha, what you're learning God's will of you. Gabi Bookatz, you want to know what I want from you? This is it. And then when you stand up to daven, whether it's an informal prayer, like Hashem, I'm really worried about this meeting at the end of the week, or you're worried about kibbutz galios. He's listening because you take him seriously. He's going to take you seriously now. That feeling of a relationship with God, and you learn to prioritize. I think that's another major thing, is spirituality. You learn to listen. We often have a strange relationship. I'm really speaking my heart here, because I think we often have a very strange relationship with what we think God wants from us. We often, I'll give you an example. I took a youth camp many years ago, and I took a youth camp, and we did a values-based tochnet for the kids. How do we determine priorities of values? A very important question. And with these high school students, and one of the things we spoke about is knowing how to learn Torah as a method to figure out the Torah's priorities. So the fact that you can mevatel this to be mekayim that, aseh doiche lois aseh, or that you can, for shalom, you can do this, all of these things, these are telling you Torah values. So how to resolve a halachic dilemma is essentially a moral dilemma.
Yes. Essentially.
And we spoke about how to figure that out. And I said, for example, the fact that the Gemara tells us that the Churban Beis HaMikdash happened because of the following Sinas Chinam or Lashon Hara, that's telling you quite a big thing. That it's not talking
the
about
whole thing of Zechariah ben Avkilas. Zechariah ben Avkilas.
Yeah,
it's like that he was just looking at this at the halacha as it was in the book.
Right.
And like, with no bigger picture of
Right.
like what's going on over here.
Right. And then all of a sudden you realize your priorities. Of course kashrut's important. Of course Shabbos is important. I mean, for goodness sake, how much time does the Torah spend dealing with kashrut and Shabbos, etc.? Of course. But when Chazal talk like this, and the Nevi'im, I mean, how many books are the whole of Yeshayahu and Navi, telling us like, what is God's priorities? Like, what are God's values? Not to undermine the other values, but it's telling you what's the high value.
Yeah.
And when we learn like that, then you kind of learn, what's God's priorities. So I get a phone call from when we came back to camp a few days later. I get a phone call from a parent, very upset with me. Why? Because I told the kids that Lashon Hara is more important than Chalav Israel. I was like, yeah. How can you tell that? I said, listen, first of all, I don't remember talking about Chalav Israel. I don't remember covering. I do remember talking about Lashon Hara, and I do remember talking about kashrus. So maybe the kid extrapolated, but I said, at what point is it not true?
Yeah.
Where do we ever have any reference that the Golos and the Churban and all the tragedy of the Jewish people happened because they went makpid on kashrus? Like, where, I'm not at all undermining any of the importance of kashrus, but really? And I think that's part of the problem. I think that's one of the reasons why I struggle, people not learning Navi. Because when you learn Navi, I mean, it's heart-wrenching stuff. Navi is gory and it's very disappointing.
Oh gosh, the story.
Malchei Israel and
Pilekesh Begiva is
like,
it turns your stomach.
Yeah, and Malachim and Shoftim and the stories of the Shmuel and all these stories, and they're heart-wrenching stories. And these are the Jewish people. So why did the Navi write them down? Why do I need to learn the Sefer Shoftim, Malachim, Shmuel, Aleph and Beis? Like, why do I have to learn these things? Because the Navi is speaking on God's behalf, saying, guys, these are the most important lessons you oaks need to learn. If we're going to get you out of this mess that we're in, learn the lessons of your history.
Yep, and don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. Some lessons we learn from events, like Pilegesh Bagiva, and other we learn from explicit criticism, like Yeshayahu Navi was probably my favorite. And regardless, we're learning the most profound life lessons. And I think as long as the Jewish people are not focusing on prioritizing knowing how to prioritize, learning Chazal as an opportunity to learn how to prioritize your life, that's spirituality. And that's spirituality. That's what Yiddishkeit is meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's such an important thing about psak halacha, is that psak halacha is not something that you just give as a blanket thing. It's a personal thing, and when the halacha codifies things like b'shas hadachak, like b'shas hadachak is not something that that's for wusses.
Yeah.
That's a very real thing, and coming back to Rabbi Goldfein, there were like a couple of occasions when, I don't want to go into details about what the specific incidents were, but there were a couple of cases where I had like real dilemmas in my life that I had to sort out, and I had halachic problems that were causing relationship issues, and when I made time for the Rosh Hashiva, and we would go on a walk, from the Yeshiva.
Those walks, they were special.
And
could never keep up with him with his long legs.
Oh, that I didn't have a problem.
Oh, okay, you didn't. I could never keep up. I was run out of breath within the first 15 minutes.
And the one time I laid out this whole issue that I was having, and for the first 20 minutes of the walk or whatever. And he said, well, the answer is very simple, and he gave me a psak halacha that is like, this is beferish in halacha and whatever, and I was like, oh, that easy? And I thought, oh, okay, that's well, okay. I feel like kind of embarrassed that I didn't know this halacha or whatever. I came and I thanked him, and I came back to the yeshiva, and I shared it with somebody else, and they said, what? He told you that? It's like that's like a das yachid in the Gemara who says that you can do this and whatever.
Yeah.
So, oh really? Like, so, but Chassid Dachak.
Yeah. The Talmud Chacham knows how to weigh those things up.
Right. Yeah. And that wasn't the only time. Like there were many other times when I had like difficult issues that I would come back to him for a psak on, and he would give me like the most makel possible halacha in order to keep shalom.
Yeah. To prioritize, and that's what it goes back to priorities.
Yeah.
And that's because you have to know. I remember late Rabbi Eloi Zatzal. Do you remember?
Yeah,
Rabbi
for sure.
Eloi. So myself and my good friend, our very good friend Anton Klein, would often walk Rabbi Eloi back from the yeshiva back to Rabbi Kurtzak's house, and we'd spend that time. We used to shuffle, used to walk very slowly, and we used to walk with him, and he used to tell us stories from Daim and told us stories about the Chofetz Chaim.
He was in the mirror, right?
He was in the mirror, and he learned by the Chofetz Chaim, and he learned by Chamoza Grodensky, and to tell us the most wonderful stories. And I remember one thing he said to us. He says, there's a fifth chaylik to the Shulchan Aruch. And that's the person asking the shaila. And what you would paskin for one person, not what you would paskin for another person. I remember seeing it with my own eyes. Rabbi Goldfein, I asked him on Sunday morning, I'll never forget this. Remember there used to be some balabatim used to come and daven with us on Sunday morning. Yeah. And after Shachris, he's putting away his tefillin, and I stood next to him to talk while I was putting away my tefillin. I can't even remember what we discussed. I remember one of the balabatim walked past and he said, sorry to interrupt Rosh Hashanah, I just want to know, it was in the middle of the Omer. He said to him, can I shave for work? Rabbi Goldfein looked at him and says, no, you can't shave for work. So, okay, thank you, Rosh Hashanah, and he walks past. 2-3 minutes later, another guy walks past his system. Rosh Hashanah, just sorry to interrupt, I just want to know, am I allowed to shave for work? Rabbi Goldfein looked at him and said, yeah, you can shave for work. So I couldn't help myself, like, hello. So, Stiru Menei Ubei. So I said, Rosh Hashanah, what's going on? He says, no, I know these gentlemen very well. He says, the first guy that asked Shala, he started his business. He's been religious his whole life. He's got this business going. Everybody knows that comes the Omer. He looks like wearing a 5 o'clock shadow. They're used to it. It's like he sits in the office the whole day. It doesn't affect anybody. Of course, no, it's not even a question. Mustn't shave. The other guy, he says, no, he's a new Baal Tshuva. Yeah. And I don't remember what his position was, but he's an employee at a big firm, whatever. We don't want him to look like a sore thumb.
I remember that was one of the other things that Rosh Hashiva once said in one of his shmuzim. It's like, he says, like, when you've got a Baal Tshuva or a convert coming and asking you halacha, you don't give them the machmir. You've got to bend over backwards to make life easy for them, because you don't want them to like throw it all off and
I teach Gerim. I teach on a Thursday night here. I teach Gerim in my house. I've been teaching
Rabbi Handler as well.
Yeah. So I've been teaching Gerim now for 15 years, and I would go through groups. It's a 2-year program to prepare them for Geris. And so I've gone through a lot of groups, and one of the policies I have is not to be machmir. Yeah. And so they know my policy is to try and make Yiddishkeit as accessible and as relevant as possible to them. And I said, well, I will keep saying to them, like, if I am going to be machmir, you need to take it seriously. Because I'm not strict generally as a policy. There's a reason why I'd be strict in a particular situation, and I'll explain to you why. But I said it's very important. I mean, you people are just really, really beginning your journey in Yiddishkeit. Later on in your life, as you grow, and you get a kesher with a rov, and you're increasing in your learning and whatever, you start taking things. You take things on carefully, not just because it's socially expected or to fit in with the herd. That's another thing, is that spirituality is very individualized. Your relationship to chumras are different. One of the criticisms the Chassam Sofer makes to the Hasidic movement, which is interesting because his own Rebbe was highly impacted by the Hasidic movement. The Chassam Sofer writes that one of the criticism is that in the Hasidic world, people take on chumras because the Rebbe does something. Right. So the tzaddik keeps a certain thing, so they all do it. They don't consider that maybe he's doing this thing because of his wisdom and his spirituality and his level of chokhmah. He knows a certain level of sensitivity he needs to take on. It's not at all relevant to them, but they take it on because the Rebbe does it.
That's why, like a lot of the Gedolim, if they kept chumras, they kept it very quiet,
very private. Yeah. And whereas Chassam Sofer writes, he says a chumrah has to be a very personal thing where you need to grow on your personal spiritual journey. What are my midas? What are my faults? What are my weaknesses? So maybe my my learning's going great, but my marriage is really not in good shape. Okay, so
priorities.
Exactly. There we go. So maybe you need to put more time into your marriage, or whatever. I'm very good with my marriage, but I'm not taking care of my health. Okay, good. Now let's work on that.
Yeah.
That's where spirituality is. Knowing how to personalize your personal growth and not judge others. That's why I said recovering addicts are the most amazing people. They don't judge.
Mm-hmm. Because they've been through it themselves and they know what it's like.
They know the hardship of life. They know how hard life can be.
How did you get into the addiction?
I think my personal journey, my personal struggle with alcohol. And then I realized I need to sort this out. And I grew. Matter of fact, for me spiritually, that was a turnaround. It was a turnaround in my own spirituality.
So you're completely TT now?
Yeah, just I haven't had a drop of alcohol for 3 years. Over 3 years. So, best thing in the world. It's the hardest thing in the world. I tell you, it's the hardest thing in the world to do.
When did you realize that you were having too much?
Lockdown, that clapped me hard. Everything started falling apart. And then it was the best thing. I mean, like now,
they were pretty rough on alcohol during lockdown.
Yeah, that's when I kind of realized is all of a sudden the government's locking down, closing down all the liquor stores, and I'm having a tantrum like a child at the store, because mommy said you can't have a sucker. And I'm having a meltdown like a baby, and I feel like my life is falling apart.
Thanks.
Like I'm not going to cope. There's a problem there if you think you're not going to cope, So.
I mean, how much were you using?
Boy, no, that's a horror story. How much was I drinking? On a good day, at least a bottle and a half of hard liquor. L'chaim to that one.
Ooh, wow. Okay.
You ever realize, I realized I had a problem. When the first thing in the morning I wake up and all I can think about is what am I going to drink first thing in the morning? Before anything else. Okay, you realize you have a problem. So my family, Hashem sends messengers the whole time. My dad always says to me, you know my dad well.
Yeah.
My dad always says to me, Hashem whispers to us the whole time. And we need to start listening when Hashem is whispering, because if we don't listen when he's whispering, he starts to shout. And nobody wants to be shouted at by God.
Yeah.
So I started hearing shouting, and I think, okay, I better start listening before my life falls apart.
Sure.
And I had to get off the downward escalator. And I got off. Went for help, changed my life. I'll literally tell you it's the hardest thing I've ever did in my life. I had to confront all my demons, all my darkness, all my issues, my fears, my anxiety, my childhood, everything dark and scary. I'll tell you something amazing. When I was in rehab, I learned for the first time in my life, I understood the Rambam Hilchos Tshuva. All those things in the first prokim of Hilchos Tshuva, those first few prokim, I never thought, I learned Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam, classic, monumental work, every Jew needs to learn that, and you think you understand it, but you don't. And when you go into the guts of life, into the eye of the storm of real living and real hardship of facing your demons, then you realize what a giant the Rambam was to say these things. Then all of a sudden, when I came back and I got back into teaching and back into work, first thing I did, I went back into the shul and I took the community through the Rambam Hilchos Tshuva because I needed to get off my chest. All these insights. I never understood the Rambam. I actually thought, now I realize I never understood the Rambam. The Rambam talks about the value of public confessions. Why on earth would you make a public confession?
I mean, that's actually not part of Hilchos Tshuva.
It is. It's in Hilchos Tshuva.
Public confessions?
Public confessions.
I thought
he says it's a mila.
I thought Vidoi was a private
Rambam
thing.
says mitzvahs ben adam lemakom, mitzvahs ben adam lechavero, ben adam lemakom. He says you shouldn't make public because that's a disregard to Hashem's kavod. But mitzvahs ben adam lechavero, you should confess them publicly.
And I suppose alcohol does get into a ben adam lechavero, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I never understood that. I thought, it's such a weird thing, public confessions. So when do you have to stand up in public? And does that mean that you stand up, would I need to stand up in shul in front of 300 people? Tell that, hi, I'm Gabi Bookatz, I'm an alcoholic. Like, really? It's not what the Rambam means.
Yeah.
When I started going into AA meetings and started speaking about really wearing my heart on my sleeve and opening up my soul to a group of people who I feel safe with, who have got my back, who have got their confidence.
Sure.
Wow, the healing and the growth, because you open yourself to criticism. And then they say to you, you're being too soft on yourself, or you're being too hard on yourself, or you're not trying this, or, keep at it, whatever. Wow. I'll tell you, that was the hardest thing in the world to do, but it was the most therapeutic thing I've ever done in my life.
Sure.
We have to do a thing called a life share. Tell the story of your life in front of all these people. And these are people you're safe with, because they wear their heart on their sleeves.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's in the same boat.
Yeah. And I had to prepare it. First time I had to decide to prepare it. While I was preparing it, in the car, which was the best, because I was alone in the car, I was driving to work, and I was just speaking it out aloud. I tell you, I cried like a baby. I had to pull over the side of the road. I'll never forget this. I had to pull over the side of the road and cry and cry and cry. And who was I talking to? I was talking to the Eibishter. I was alone in the car, and it was so cathartic. And then, when I stood up there, I'm a public speaker, standing in front of 300 people, and that's what I do every day. I speak publicly. To stand in front of those 12, 15 people was I was shaking. I was so scared. I was so terrified. And they saw it. And it was the best thing, the hardest thing, best thing I ever did.
Wow.
So I found God in a way that I never thought possible. I think my Yiddishkeit has improved. And part of prioritizing, understanding proper priorities when you're learning Torah, is also realizing what's really important to Hashem. That you don't beat yourself up over, things like that. Whatever it may be. Like, it's like God does not hate you if you missed Kriyat Shema. I'm not a failure. You understand that. It's huge. It's huge. Doesn't make it right. It's not right.
Yeah.
But you're not a failure. What you're riddling yourself with guilt for? How on earth is that God's priorities?
Yeah.
After 120 years, you think that's like that.
It's like what you're like. Yeah. Now that I've learned of your experience with alcohol, it's like, I've also been having I've never had an alcohol addiction. Baruch Hashem. Everyone's going to have their addictions, and you got to choose.
TikTok, when TikTok was cancelled,
choose your addictions well.
The Americans were melting when TikTok was cancelled.
For 1 day.
For 1 day.
Yeah, and so like I try to make my addictions health and fitness, working out,
good things.
like that's So I try to get my brain into it. But like in terms of alcohol, like, I've been trying to, I'm a social drinker. If people pull out something, I'll have a drink, and
there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, so that's kind of what I want to get at. Is there nothing wrong with that?
Absolutely nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with responsible drinking. Alcohol's part of life. At my shul, I have no problem with the guys pulling out alcohol. The only requirements at our shul that I insist on is that it has to be managed by the adults. Kids can't access it. Cannot be accessible to kids, and the adults have to make sure that nobody's overdoing it. So as long as it's responsible and kids that don't have access.
Where does it cross the line?
Well, first of all, I don't think alcohol should ever be freely available so children could reach it, even teenagers. First of all, it's illegal, and number two, it's dangerous. And then
like if you're sort of having Shabbos meal and a couple of adults pull out a beer, and the kid says, 15-year-old says, "Can I have some beer, please, Dad?"
Look, so that's the prerogative of the parent, but that has to be done with wisdom. Parents are, unfortunately, now 21st century, a lot of parents don't know how to parent. I used to say to, I think to myself, like, the same way you have to get a driver's license before you drive. Some people should get a parenting license before they learn how to parent.
And if you fail, then you have to leave your body parts at the door.
Yeah. You're sorry, dear, you're not qualified. You know, it's like, you know, that Monty Python, you know, the machine that goes ping,
Yes.
and then the guy says, what should I do? Don't worry, dear, you're not qualified. So I think some parents are proper not qualified. I think it takes a lot of chokhmah to know, you know. But I mean, the problem with parents today is that they facilitate for that abuse of alcohol, misuse of alcohol, and children having pre parties and post parties, matric dances, and you know, and the parents are excessive, and we've got a huge problem of people drinking on a Friday night, men getting together on a Friday night. They drink before Kabbalah Shabbos, before candlelighting. They drink, then they get hammered. They miss shul. They often don't.
Is that like a phenomenon?
It's becoming a huge problem.
How does that become a thing?
I have no idea how it started. And we've got wives who are complaining that their husbands are not coming home for supper because, or they do, they come home and they go to sleep. And the father is just not at the table. That's a problem.
That's clearly wrong.
And the wife is embarrassed. She can't have guests anymore. The kids, and what kind of a standard is the father setting for his children?
Okay, so I mean, you're bringing a very extreme example.
Well,
like where have you crossed over between acceptable, not unhealthy drinking? So I don't want to say that any drinking is healthy.
Yeah, so there's always a few litmus tests you could run. Like number one, have you heard criticism from other people saying to you, you're overdoing it? That's a question. Is it your boss, your wife, your children, your parents? Have people told you that? That's a marker. Another indication would be, is it affecting other priorities of your life? Such as spending time with the kids. Is it affecting your davening? Is it affecting your learning? You know, are you more anxious about drinking and you're ignoring other priorities that are valuable to you, personal values, such as family values? You know, is it at that expense? Is it, have you tried giving up and found it difficult to give up? You know, or find it maybe impossible to give up?
Yeah.
You know, how do you respond when people call you out? Do you respond with aggression and you feel that they've crossed the line? Or, you know, like that, those are clues, you know. Somebody said, you know, like when Hashem appears to Moshe Rabbeinu at the burning bush, how did he know that it was Hashem? Is because Hasnei bo'er ve'einenu kal. You know, it's
burning, but it's not being
destroyed.
Yeah.
So that's a fire of God. That's fire of spirituality. Is that is light and warmth. It's not destructive. The light of the fire of addiction is destructive. It destroys your health, it destroys your finances, your family life, your economic situation. Then, you know, if it starts burning things, we have a problem. And the amazing thing is that there's amazing resources available today. Things today, you know, 200 years ago, alcoholism was an untreatable condition. It was untreatable. There was no success rate at all. I would say since the 1930s till today, before the 1930s, there was no treatment for alcoholism. And today, it's a very treatable condition. A very treatable condition, even without medication.
Yeah.
You know, AA doesn't use medication. And AA is still to this day the most successful treatment for recovery. And
it's all about confronting your demons.
And it's all about God. It's all God-centered. It's all spiritual.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Completely spiritually centered. It's God-centered. You have to bring God back into your life. However you understand it, whatever your definition of God is.
And like drawing some parallels with other addictions. I mean, one of the other major addictions of our time is internet addiction, porn. And
look, so there are many different types of addiction. There's addiction, chemical addiction, alcohol, nicotine, heroin, you know, coke. I mean, there's so many different, and then these behavioral addictions. It's like sex addiction, you know, porn addiction. These gambling addictions. There's so many different types of addiction, and today we're finding in the modern age these shopping addictions that people, women particularly, are becoming addicted to shopping. And
online
social media, absolutely, with kids. You know, at our school, at Yeshiva College, and I know it's King David are doing the same program, we're now banning cell phones. Our grades, we've now started a program, launched this year, 2025, that grades 7, 8s and 9s are not allowed to bring phones to school. And if they do, because they've got arrangements.
For sure as well.
Yeah, primary school I'm not involved with, but I'm assuming it's the same.
Which school are you involved in?
At Yeshiva College. And if they do need to bring their cell phones to school because they've got arrangements after school or sports or whatever, when they come in, they have to put it in a locker that's got their name and it's locked away, and they have no access to the phone. After school, they can get their phones again. So it means during school hours, there are no phones, not in the playground, not in the classroom.
And at what grade do you stop that?
So what we're doing temporarily, the hope is to eventually weed it through, wake up, 7s, 10s, 11s, 12s. The kids are allowed to bring their cell phones to school, but they're not allowed to take it out during the classroom or during break, unless the teacher requires it. Meaning, if the teacher says, "Okay, go online and fill out this Google form or this Google classroom exercise, etc." That's the teacher's prerogative. But if we see that cell phone during break, even during break, we confiscate it. And they can lose it for a day, and next time 3 days.
That sounds like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, and what's motivating it? Health, pure health, not some, like it's because kids are, like you're saying, kids are addicted. And you know what's amazing now? The playground, it's the most beautiful thing to see. Kids talking to each other, playing volleyball.
Like we did in our day.
Exactly. Look at this. There's another human being. Hello. Oh no, it's Frank.
In person,
no. It's like.
Well, you don't look anything like your avatar.
Yeah, exactly. The next thing you know, you can communicate, and the kids are so much happier. Playground is noisy, and it's just so much more amenable, and it's just you see, it's so unnatural. It's so unnatural, this whole cell phone world that we've been in. And it has become a dopamine addiction to get that short fix.
So I wanted to get your insights, like how all these, if somebody is struggling with one of these other addictions, and this is one of the
eating disorders,
all of these things, is there a common thread to all addictions that a person who wants to break free of an addiction can follow the following steps?
Look, I think the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous is a model that can be reapplied.
What are the 12 steps?
You want me to take them through them?
Yeah, why not? Just
I need to take them out and read them for you.
Well, just give me an al-reglachas.
No, look, the beauty of the 12 steps is that they're progressive. You start at step 1 and you land up in step 12.
Right, so you don't take everything on at once.
The first 3 steps are essentially dealing with your own self, acknowledging your weaknesses, acknowledging that you're powerless of alcohol, your life is becoming manageable, etc. And then, taking a moral inventory, making amends, that's from step 4 onwards, and you start making amends with people that you've hurt, etc. Meditation, prayer to God, etc. And then step 12 eventually is sharing the message to the still suffering alcoholic or whatever. So the amazing things about those 12 steps is that they profoundly spiritual, and they are profoundly honest, and you see it consistent in Chazal, like this approach, 3 steps essentially. First is self-awareness and speaking the truth. Then afterwards, working and improving and making amends and fixing, taking steps to correcting. And the 12 steps is and reaching out to others. And there's no doubt. I mean, I know with my own program and what I've done with others is that when you take responsibility for somebody else's recovery, your recovery goes off the chart.
That kind of makes sense. Like when you're teaching Torah,
exactly. Maybe that's what the Gemara says. Gemara Gadol Hamasa Yoter Min Ose. Maybe that's what Chazal mean, because the growth that you accomplish is unbelievable. So, and that's so. I think the 12 steps can be very much used And I know they are used by Overeaters Anonymous. They're used by addiction, any form of addictions. They're pliable, and you just change the wording a bit, and you use it in these exercise books. I took my shul. I did an experiment after the broch. I normally give a parsha share, and I decided to take the shul through the 12 steps. And I printed up, prepared beforehand. I gave them exercises, and I said, fill in the blank with whatever you want to work on. Anger. Let's say you want to work on your anger, fine. Let's work on your anger. And I'm going to give you exercises. Take it back home, and or you want to work on whatever midah it is that you work on. And the 12 steps work. That's the beauty of it. Somebody said to me, but Rabbi, it's so goyish and it was written by non-Jews. I said, well, first of all, so what? What do you think? Non-Jews don't have access to God and don't have access to health? Like, really? You think you're privy to that? Excuse me. And number two, I said, the Rav Shal Salanter writes explicitly, I think it's in Geret Dalet, in Or Yisrael, that if you find it useful to find non-Jewish wisdom as a helpful tool in working on your midas, matova manayin. And all of a sudden people, they realize that they can work. The 12 steps are a powerful tool to work on almost any midah you need to work on. They're very practical, the exercises that you can do in each one in a very real way.
Sure.
So it's quite remarkable.
That's a very inspiring kind of thing. I totally didn't expect the conversation to go in this direction. Yeah, I had no idea what your struggles were. I mean, we haven't been that much in touch since
look, it's not something. It's not like something I put up on YouTube, But
nonetheless, you're public about it.
I'm public. Look, I don't stand up for no reason.
Yeah.
But people ask, or people, I find it helps that person in that space.
Yeah.
I've heard, some guys at the shul all of a sudden notice that the rabbi's not drinking anymore at the brocha.
Oh, Rabbi, have a l'chaim.
Come on, have a l'chaim. They're sponsoring the brocha. They want to share l'chaim. So I'll take out the cold drink. I'm drinking. I say, l'chaim. They say, come have a... No, it's okay. And then, people notice that. Yeah. And some people said to me, Rabbi, you've so inspired me. You've stopped drinking, I've noticed.
Yeah.
Like it's inspired me, maybe I should also.
But I kind of have this wish as well, because every time I go to Kiddush in my shul, there's always at least 2 bottles of scotch out there being passed around, and have a l'chaim, another one. It's all the social stuff, and it all seems kind of harmless, but I don't know how many actual alcoholics there are out there.
Yeah.
And you're pushing, putting this in front of people. I kind of wish we didn't have this culture of make a l'chaim.
Yeah.
Because honestly,
it's not the healthy way to celebrate.
And alcohol has no health benefits.
No, there's no health benefits.
There's nothing
it's
good about it. And it's all a social thing. And I kind of wish that we could just break this and say, okay, we're not doing this anymore. Let's make l'chaims on soda water or Coca-Cola even. Even Coca-Cola is like a childhood chemistry experiment. But it's you want to put that in your body. Okay.
Why do you have to have a drink in order to dance?
Yeah,
it's Simchas Torah.
Yeah.
Why do you have to have a drink in order to celebrate?
So Purim is a very difficult.
So Purim is difficult, but the law. First of all, the law is the law, meaning you can't facilitate for children to drink. Yeah. That's Dina de Mechusa. Dina is not even a question.
Right.
And even then, you have to do it responsibly. The halacha is very clear. The Ramah, that if you're going to cause damage to yourself or others, it's it can't be. It just can't. And it's a personal thing. So comes the 4 cups of wine. Everybody knows. Abba has grape juice. Right. Look, we don't have alcohol in my house. There's no alcohol in this house.
Right.
So, but, you're right. I don't see the need. Why do people have to? But the fact that some people do, let them. Gesundheit. I'm not going to stop anybody. I'm not going to dictate. Just do it responsibly and set the right model for your children.
Yeah.
You have to ask yourself, why are you drinking? Are you drinking to escape? Are you? Is there something about you you're trying to, putting out fires inside? What's going on?
Right.
These are questions people need to ask. So then I only managed to figure out, I only know myself now because of this. What a remarkable thing.
Yeah. I think I'm kind of hopeful. Although I don't see any trend in this direction. But for example, whereas 20, 30 years ago it was socially acceptable to smoke, and gradually it's becoming more and more of an isolating thing. What, you smoke? It's like, really?
Yeah.
It's
a bit cheap.
It's tacky. It's tacky to smoke. Nobody looks at the smoke and says, "Oh, look, he's so cool." Except the teenagers who think that they're
now vaping is the thing.
Is it any better? It's like, I don't know. It's like
I don't know.
But I mean, at least in the circles that I'm in, it's like somebody to pull out a cigarette is like, really? You smoke?
Yeah.
And I kind of wish we would get to a situation where say, you really you drink?
Yeah.
But it'll take.
Look,
some time.
historically, humanity's been drinking alcohol since as long as we can remember.
Yeah, smoking was a recent.
Smoking's a recent thing. But alcohol is, as far as we can remember, both in the Far East, in Africa, the Middle East.
Lot,
yeah. And Noch, so it's like...
Oh, sorry, Noch predates Lot.
Yeah. So and historically, alcohol's always been a part of life. I mean, the fact that we say Kiddush and wine, and the chayrus of Pesach has to be done with alcohol.
Lechatchila,
Yeah, lechatchila. So to have a time of chayrus, there's an element of kavod to it.
But I think we do need to have more of a big red warning label on this stuff.
Yeah. Look, but I would never impose my weaknesses on other people. You know what I mean? But we certainly have to be aware of it. We have to be very careful with our children. And the real critical, maybe it's a conversation for another time, is to get down to the bottom roots of why people need to drink. Meaning, what childhood experience did a person, what personal traumas, what social problems, ailments are there really in modern society that we find there's so much depression and anxiety and so much suicide and so much alcoholism, and not just alcoholism, all forms of addictions. Yeah. Addictions are off the chart. Why? What's going on in our modern society that these ailments? Family life has been torn apart. Children being raised by single parenting, often not knowing who the father is. Abuse. If it's not active abuse, it's just lack of love. Children not receiving love, not being properly parented. Yeah. For a child to be deprived of love in the first, let's say, 4 years of their life does equal damage to the development of their brain as if they were actually physically abused. Or they were just deprived of proper attention. So that's a form of abuse, but just, it's like malnutrition of the mind.
Malnutrition of the mind, that's...
And we see the same way. If you have malnutrition, the brain's development to the age of 20, the brain is still developing. The scarring on the brain, if there's malnutrition during physical malnutrition in the brain, has long-term scarring in terms of the growth of that person. That's also true emotional. So if there's emotional scarring during those years, or if children who... Marijuana, huge problem in our society.
Right now it's legal in South Africa.
Yeah, and it's a huge problem. Kids who are smoking or are getting high on marijuana and are doing it regularly, they are affecting themselves for their entire adult lives. They will be hindered for their entire adult lives. They scarred their brain, and it cannot be... At this stage,
are you talking about people like who are underage specifically?
We know that the younger the person is who smokes or drinks, the effects that it has on the brain during its years of development is permanent. Permanent effects. People who are promising, I know people that were promising in their youth in terms of their career and what kind of life they would create for themselves, and then became addicted to marijuana, emotionally addicted to marijuana.
Because is it actually physically addictive, or is it just...
I don't think it's physically addictive, it's emotionally very addictive.
Yeah.
It's emotionally very addictive. And it's underestimated. Kids underestimate how addictive that the respite it gives them from anxiety. They don't know how addictive that experience is.
Yeah.
and they crave it, and there's stress and anxiety, and when it's exam time and they need another one.
So why is there such a move all around the world to legalize marijuana?
Look, I think it's part of a bigger problem, which is not yet solved, and that is the whole question of the war on drugs, because the war on drugs that's been going on since the 50s. I think since the 50s. The war on drugs has been an absolute and utter disaster. There are more people on the crime.
But define what you mean by the war on drugs.
You know, the legal war on crime, the fact that you've got addicts who are imprisoned because they caught buying heroin on the street. That's the victim. So he or she are just innocent victims of happenstance of their childhood. I can tell you.
It's the dealers who.
And the whole system has to be. So now you illegalize it, you make it illegal, and now the cartels are running it. So it has huge political and financial ramifications. And
now Trump's declared the cartels foreign terrorist organizations.
Yeah, in a hope to another way to deal with this.
Yeah.
And what the solution is, I'm not too sure. But I do know the solutions, how to deal with drugs in terms of the war on drugs, I'm not too sure. But I do know what we need to put in place in society in terms of proper child rearing, proper parenting. I think that's the first solution. Rav Hirsch writes, he says, if parents, in Chorev, I must try and remember the exact lashon. Rav Hirsch says, if governments understood the value of a stable home, they would invest more money into creating stable families than they would into their the war effort, because the stability of that society is more determined by healthy families than by how safe your borders are.
How would you do that as a government to invest in families? How do you get?
So I think first and foremost is education. Education has to be a priority for any given government. Number two is that I think that there has to be. We know, for example, that the more prosperous a country is, the more educated a country is, the more family planning is put in place. Third world countries have often got the highest rate of childbirths. So now you've got a poor family with huge numbers, with extremely limited resources. Now you've got children being raised it's a recipe for disaster. And because there's no family planning and there's no system. So I think that governments really have to come together and work on education. How do we build empowering women? I think women's education is probably the number one priority, because women really in charge of setting the culture and the values of the home and of society.
And I think there's also, if I'm going to inject my own little opinion over here, is that I think one of the cultural shifts that really has to change is that I don't know how long it's been, but almost as long as I can remember, popular culture denigrates the role of the father.
Yes.
So everything, like from Homer Simpson, Homer Simpson's a blathering idiot.
Yeah, and meantime, he's actually the sweetest dad in the world. Yeah,
no, he's not. Homer Simpson is a total jerk.
I know he's a total jerk.
He's like, this is, and Ned Flanders he's held up as actually quite a decent guy, even though they mock him, but they mock him also remorselessly.
Yeah.
But I mean, all these sitcoms that you had on television always had the dad being like this terrible loser and whatever.
Yeah.
I think almost the only show I can remember growing up where the dad was like a normal, nice guy was like the Cosby Show.
I was thinking of Cheers.
Cheers? What dad?
Remember Cheers? Remember the bar? No, I'm joking, because there were all a bunch of men sitting in a bar drinking.
No, that wasn't. That wasn't my model that I was thinking of. But like all the sitcoms and whatever, they all like mocked the dad, and this this sort of the woke thing about toxic masculinity. Like, masculinity is good.
Yeah,
you need men to be masculine because that's what they do. And
and the statistics are clear in terms of violent crime. The number of violent criminals who come from single parent home, or often parents homes where they don't even know who the father is.
Yeah.
The numbers here in South Africa are staggering. And boys particularly have no role model of what a man really ought to be. What is a father?
Feeds on itself.
Right, it's a soft picture. So these are the conversations that governments need to have, together with educators, together with psychologists.
Now, on that subject, I have some personal experience in this. One of my past jobs, I was writing a computer system for a charter school network in New York. You know what the charter schools are? They're basically public schools, but they're not run at all by the government, and they're funded by philanthropists. Now, the charter school network I was working for was called Success Academy, run by an amazing woman, Eva Moskowitz, and she just took on this mission on herself to provide the best possible education for the children, and where the children are always at the center of attention. Now, why is this different? The biggest thing that she did that made this a success is she refused to work with teachers' unions.
Yeah.
Because teachers' unions put the interests of teachers ahead of the students. It makes it impossible to fire bad teachers.
Right.
So they would typically only hire teachers straight out of college. It's not anyone who's had experience of how to
experience sometimes negative.
They last, when I've finished my work on the project, they had about 30 schools in the network all around, and this was all in the New York metropolitan area. Okay, and they were taking kids from really the wrong demographics, and it's free. It's 100% free for them. They had a lottery to get in.
So they deliberately. Oh, okay.
It was a lottery to get in. Okay. So everyone is applying to get into Success Academy, and they can't take everyone, so they have a lottery. And you have once you've got a sibling in, then you've got a foot in the door, and they let you in. But I went into one of these schools just to see how they're doing this stuff, and it's like, oh my word, I wish I had been to a school like this. Yeah. They where the first of all the kids are wearing uniforms, okay, and they are very, very tough on discipline for one thing. They are. All these rules, like coming with a spot on your uniform. Yeah. No. They notice. They notice you forgot to wear your tie. Where's your tie today? And it's like, okay, and being punctual, completing your homework. All these things they keep a record, but at the same time they are so loving. So loving to these children. I was just looking outside the classroom. First of all, the kids all line up very neatly, boys on this side, girls on this side, and as they come in, they all greet the teacher and say, "Good morning, Miss Jones. Good morning, Miss Jones." And if they want, they can shake hands. And at one point, after the first few kids shook hands as they went in, and one kid just walked up and gave Miss Jones a big hug, and then every kid afterwards came and gave her a hug. So they all come into the room, and they've got this the mat on the floor is like a personal space mat. There are 30 little squares over there, and there's a little circle, and everyone sits on their bit of the circle, and they keep respect each other's personal space.
That's amazing.
And the teacher's busy talking. I'm watching from the doorway as she's giving the lesson, and while she's talking, she's sidling over to one kid who's kind of slouching over to the side, and so she leans over to this kid and whispers something in his ear, and he sits upright and like that, and she carries without breaking stride almost.
Amazing.
And thinking if I was in school, it's Bear, sit up. It's like, oh my gosh, the results that these schools get, they're indistinguishable from private schools.
Yeah.
And these are kids who are coming from single-parent homes. 75% are from single-parent homes. And
it's real chesed.
A not insignificant number of them have had one or both parents in jail.
Yeah. the first, and I think that's the part of the challenge today is that parents are so busy, both mom and dad, in terms of their personal career, and that schools are playing kind of that role.
Yeah,
and
when you have a reality of that situation, I mean, it's great to like say, okay, we need to focus on education and getting people to build up the core family. Matthias, we don't have that, and we can't wait a generation for people to grow up and realize that, we need to have a core family. Matthias, we have places with broken families. We got to give this generation hope. And like things like these charter schools are honestly like they're saving lives. They're saving lives. I was like,
they're saving the future.
I was like actually getting all choked up, and even now thinking about it, I'm getting all like choked up thinking about what they were doing in these schools. It's just
and these kids would never have that opportunity otherwise. So that it's a major thing. So the sacred nature of family.
Yeah.
Something that modern society, Western society, certainly poo-poos. Why do you need a stable family? The role of community. I often think to myself, for people that don't grow up in a religious community, Christian, Jewish, loich patli, they don't have community. The whole concept of community. There's a group of people out there who've got your back. There's a network that can catch you when you fall. It's in the secular world, it's unknown. If you look at the amount of charity work that's been done in Alex or the townships, 100% of them, close to 100% of them, are all done by churches. The government has done almost zero to help the homeless, the orphans, the addiction centers. They're all run by churches. So that kind of the offshoot of a religious community is unmatched, and in the secular world, that's absolutely crucial. I get such pleasure when I drive on a Sunday and you see these black communities under a tree wearing their green or yellow robes and they're sitting under a tree and there's some pastor standing up and preaching. I get such pleasure from it, because what's he talking about? He's talking about family values, integrity. He's talking about honesty and loyalty and tznius. I was talking to our we've got a lady that comes in once a week, and she's like a rebbitzin in her community. Yeah. And she often listens to a preacher while she's working. Oh yeah. And I ask her to translate what's he saying. So she says, no, he's talking about modesty, And it's like amazing. And it's not over the top. It's like real, healthy modesty stuff. The other day he was talking about the importance of loyalty between husband and wife. It was like, where are these people going to hear that kind of message if it's not for the churches? Unbelievable.
They're not going to get it from the example of the government.
Certainly not. So that's why I think like religious community plays such a crucial role in creating a stable society. And a part of that is addiction. I mean, what's a recovering addict going to, where's he going to turn to? Especially if he's not well off. He can't go to a private rehab. The government doesn't provide anything. He goes to a church.
AA is...
So AA is a non-profit. Yeah. We don't charge, we don't take money, we don't collect. A person makes a donation at the end of every meeting and the money goes to pay for whoever's hosting, like if it's in a shul or church or... Right. To pay for rent or pay for the electricity.
Yeah, that's it. Every organization has expenses, and
nobody takes money out of it.
Yeah.
So, and that's remarkable. And you hear their stories of recovery, and one of the things that's a common story of recovery is that these rooms, they become family, and I hear them speaking about how one guy was on the precipice of relapse, and he phoned his sponsor. There's a sponsor-sponsee program in AA where you have to have somebody who's like your mentor, called your sponsor, and he takes you through the 12 steps. You have to meet him regularly, and I've got a sponsor. I sponsor 2 other people, and part of that is it's free of charge. He doesn't charge money, and I could phone him up at 2:00 in the morning, saying I'm about to relapse. I'm going through and people tell me like how he just got in his car at 2:00 in the morning and came to help me. Yeah, it's like that's community. So it's amazing, and that's how they recover. That's how they recover.
So I'm going to sort of shift the discussion now that we're and segue into community now that we're talking about that. You're a rabbi of a community. So like, what's it like?
What's it like?
I mean, why did you decide to do that?
I have no idea how I got here. I mean, like, I look back at my life and I remember the one funny story. We're talking about Rabbi Goldfein's Hatzel. I remember when I was 3-4 years in the yeshiva, and Rabbi Goldfein asked me to come and give a Chai Adam shir to the newbies, came out of, the first years. Could I give a Chai Adam shir to the guys? I said, yeah, with pleasure. So I had 4.
Was I in that shir?
I can't remember.
Because I remember definitely learning Chai Adam, and it probably was with you.
Maybe. And we sat at that table at the back. Remember where there's that big wooden table? And I had 4 or 5 guys, youngsters, who first year of yeshiva, and we would go through Chai Adam together. And I remember, so I started teaching them. It was every day before breakfast. And then I noticed that one day in the corner of my eye, I saw the Rosh Yeshiva standing in the doorway, and he was watching. And he just stood and watched and watched and watched. It was a bit disconcerting. Yeah. Quite disconcerting.
Did I teach it wrong?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, is my spelling bad? And so anyway, the shir ended, and we were going off for breakfast, and I walked past him, and he says, Gabi, you've got the gift. I said, what are you talking about? He said, the gift of teaching. I said, I didn't. I said to him, is that why you were watching? He said, yeah, I was watching because I could see, you've got the gift of teaching. I was like, thanks. I don't know what that means. I really have no idea. I was just having fun with these youngsters, We were just learning together. It was just such fun and connecting.
Yeah.
And he noticed, and he asked me to do a teaching course. And he sponsored it. He paid for it.
Really?
Yeah, I did a teaching course at JSUP. Remember JSUP, the old days of JSUP? It was
the name is familiar, but...
Rav Kurstak ran it, the old Rosh Beis Din. And it's a Jewish studies teacher's proper qualification. And it was accredited by, what's the name? What's that big university in Pretoria?
UNISA.
Yeah. And it was accredited by UNISA. And it was great. And he sponsored it. Rosh Yeshiva sponsored it. And I got into teaching. And eventually, Rabbi Kasef, our good friend from yeshiva days as well, he was then the head of the Jewish Board of Education, was my boss. I was teaching in King David Linksfield. He said to me, listen, you're a Jewish studies teacher. Kids love you. You're doing really well. But being a male Jewish studies teacher is not the same as being a rabbi. You ever thought of getting smicha? I was like, I don't know if I like rabbis.
Were you still in the yeshiva at the time?
No. I was learning at Kollel in the afternoon. I had like...
Right.
So he said to me...
And speaking of Kollel, I mean, this is also how you met your wife, was by teaching.
Yes. That's also true.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You're going to have to blackmail me for that information.
Okay, sorry, I've already said too much.
Yeah. So he said to me, you need to get your smicha. Because as a teacher, a male teacher, Jewish studies, to be called rabbi, so-and-so.
As opposed to Mr. Bookatz.
Mr. Bookatz. It just really helps your career. So I thought, what, he's right. So that's when I was learning with Jared at the time. And we started learning smicha together. It's a lot of bittul at the same time.
I have no doubt.
You can just imagine.
Yeah.
We were very naughty together. Remember all the pranks we used to pull at the yeshiva? Some memorable stories.
Yes, but we're now already post yeshiva, so we're much more mature now.
Yeah. And we got smicha, and then Rabbi Kranus, Zatzal, the late Rabbi Kranus, he also said, he says, listen, I need an assistant rabbi at my shul.
Right.
Will you come help me out?
Yeah.
I said, okay. If it's almost like a
adult you already had post. Your smicha at this point.
Yes.
Right.
And I just started. I was just about to get my smicha. I got my smicha while I was already working with him. And now I'm an assistant rabbi, and I got involved with communal adult education. So for me, it was a communal, like an educational opportunity platform.
Right.
And eventually you get involved in stuff that you did not prepare for. I even remember speaking once to Rabbi Goldfein. I said, now I have to deal with politics and, communal politics.
I did not sign up for
this. I did not see that in any Tosfos,
Yeah.
and fundraising and communal this and that. That's like Walt. The shirim is great, but like counseling. He said, yeah, some things you can only learn the hard way. You know, the truth is I did formalize it a bit, you know, but I started enjoying it, and I started, I guess, tasting a bit of success. And that was great. And then, so I got into full-time teaching, high school teaching in the morning and communal work in the afternoon. Adult education and communal work. Like we said, you know, going to visit somebody who's coming home from an operation, or nichum avelim, or preparing a bride and groom for their wedding.
Right.
And that kind of stuff, that's very rewarding. Very rewarding, very humbling as well. Because you see the darkness of life. People go through a hard time. I often come home from some communal matter or some couple or something, and I just come home and I kiss my children. I say, thank you, God.
Mm-hmm.
I say to my wife, thank you for being my wife.
You get to see a lot of the dark side.
Yeah, and unresolved issues. A funeral whose, I don't know, child has got unresolved issue with a deceased father, and now she's inconsolable because she never resolved that issue. It's like, whew. And you have to help. You have to help. And it's a privilege, very humbling, very grateful, and a privilege, because all of a sudden you look back at your life or you catch them 10 years down the line and they tell you, you know, you changed my life. You took a new direction. Just this morning I got a WhatsApp from a couple who celebrated their 5th anniversary, young couple married, got their first child, started a successful business, the two of them. And she reminded me, do you remember you did our wedding? I said, of course I remember I did your wedding. She said, you know why you did our wedding? I said, well, I taught you both at school. She said, yeah, because you were the only rabbi that ever gave us like the time of day to sit down and talk. And after school, even though they weren't religious, that made a deep impression on them.
Yeah.
You know, we've got one rabbi who, like, you know, just like a mensch. And all I did was just listen. I don't know if anything I did special. Just listen, validate what the emotions are and what they're going through. Reflect back to them.
That's a huge compliment to you.
Yeah, I was amazed. You know, that's amazing.
It's one of those things that you didn't do that consciously.
Not at all.
It was just, you know, that's just what you do.
Yeah, it's just what you do. Exactly. Somebody needs help, and it's like there's somebody, and if all you can do is just listen to their pain, and reflect it back to them, they feel heard and they feel safe and not judged. Even if you don't give them advice, you just really hear them out. Wow, that makes a huge difference, a world of a difference to them. They just to feel that they're not alone and they can reach out to you, and they, you know. Made a big impression on me when I was in grade 11. Do you remember we did the encounter program? Yeah. So I think you were a year above me at school.
I was a year above you in school. You missed a year because of your Israel experience. Yeah.
That's right.
So you're actually older than me, but
oh really?
Yes, you are.
Whoa.
See, I just turned 52 a few days ago.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh well, happy birthday.
And happy birthday, October, right?
October, very good.
I don't remember the date though.
2nd, yeah, very good.
Oh wait, you're the same birthday as my sister.
Oh really?
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yes, there you go. So now I'll know when to wish you happy birthday.
I've got to remember to wish myself happy birthday. So we went to an encounter when we were in grade 11.
Yeah.
And Rabbi Johnny Altman was my madrich. And he was just this young, cool guy, religious, learned, cool, relatable, approachable, and all he did was, I was going through a hard time with my girlfriend and he just sat, and I'll never forget this, he just sat and listened.
Yeah.
And one day, and we were sitting outside my bungalow, chalets, maybe in Paris, do you remember that place? And we would sit there and in this dusty place. It was absolutely awful. and there we just sat on the swings, and he just listened to me rant. Yeah. And that for me made a world of a difference. And I maintained contact with him over the years. And to this day, we're still very good friends. Yeah. And in many ways, he was the first person to actually open my eyes up to Yiddishkeit as a, as a
without even trying.
Without even trying. Just a dugma ishit.
Yeah.
You know, just by the personality that he is. And we're still very good mates. We work together at Yeshiva College. He's now the rabbi of Mizrahi Shul.
Yeah.
You know, and we're very good friends. So it's a remarkable story. So yeah, that's community rabbinics. I still struggle with the fundraising. Like, I know my strengths. I say to the Balabatim, you deal with the finances. Ich weiß nicht.
Yeah.
Like, I really don't know for finances.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm happy to help with everything else. You know, so you do.
Yeah.
And you can, and strangely enough, you change lives. Weird.
Yeah.
So it's a great privilege.
What are your greatest war stories? Let's have some fun ones.
Fun?
Yeah, let's have some fun ones, because it's been quite heavy up until now. So
War stories. War stories with Rabbi Bookatz. Welcome to the new episode.
yeah.
So, one funny, I mean, it wasn't funny at the time.
Yeah.
It was funny in hindsight.
Yeah.
We had it's like so embarrassing. We had
Sounds good already.
Yeah. I was working with Rabbi Perez.
Yeah.
I was the associate rabbi with Rabbi Perez at Mizrahi Shul.
Right.
And we had a woman that passed away. I think we got the news, on Saturday night. So this was the days before of WhatsApp. So we didn't have a WhatsApp group or anything. So we had to announce it because it's a core family, a well-known family, and the one daughter, the one daughter passed away, and so I was told about it. I was very upset and whatever and then I had to quickly send out SMS because the funeral was going to happen Sunday morning, and we had this group SMSs for the whole shul to get. It's a large community, so 500, 600 family, SMSs to be sent out. So and it's embarrassing. When I got the news, I got the name wrong of who it was that passed away in the family, and I knew the family well. I thought it was the old man, the Zayda. It wasn't. It was his daughter-in-law that passed away.
Oh, Gewalt.
You can see where this is going.
Oh, Gewalt.
I was like, because at first the name sounded similar, and then I phoned Rabbi Perez, did you hear about this? He says, yeah, you heard, this is terrible, I'll meet you at the house now, we'll go. And so I confirmed my suspicion that it was the Zayda. So he says, will you just quickly send out a community SMS? We had like this internet system where we could log on and send out a communal SMS.
Yeah.
And I did. And by then we had a time for the funeral.
Yeah.
I sent out the SMS that the Zayda died.
Yeah.
And then I got in my car and I go to the house. I'm thinking, why are we going to the son's house? I thought we would go to the Zayda's house.
Yeah.
And I go there and I see the Zayda there. He says, I'm delighted to hear the good news. I said, what good news? He says that I'm alive. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, that's terrible. It was so embarrassing.
News of my demise is greatly exaggerated.
Yes.
Although you don't want to be joking about that when your daughter-in-law is just...
Yeah, he had a wicked sense of humor. A shame, that was a shame. He's since passed away, but that was an embarrassing war story. So I learned, you kind of learn a lot of things along the way about
confirming the information.
And some people, and also you learn about people's shticks, because some people get very upset if you put their name in the newsletter, but you don't spell it right.
Yeah.
Right? To the point that it's like a faribble that you misspelled their name, It's like hilarious how upset they get. So I've learned the hard way, like, okay, just send me just everybody's name in there, so I can put it in the newsletter and I'll get spelling. Often it's just to remember everybody's there, but you couldn't, and to make sure I've got the spelling right of everybody's names, because people do get upset about those things.
Yeah.
So, which is understandable, but sometimes it's a bit over the top. And people are fickle, people are funny, like sometimes you go out of your way for somebody.
Yeah.
And you get no acknowledgement of it, like somebody passed away and we really made an effort. The community was amazing. And even the chief rabbi came to be Menachem Avel, and he went and spoke to Mincha Mariv. It was really, really meaningful. And the community got zip acknowledgement for it. Like really, the community went out of the way. And yet the other people, a woman actually who you know, asked me for a letter for university because the exam was set on Shabbat. So I want like a template asking the university to let the person off. It's a standard letter, you know, to please excuse this person. They can write a supplementary exam because the exam is on Shabbos or Yom Tov, whatever. So I wrote this letter. Well, the whole thing took me 2 minutes.
Right.
I come back that afternoon home and there's a cake and flowers and a letter of thank you. Like people, you know, that's people.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, thank you for the letter. And so
can be pretty rewarding.
Yeah, so it can be very rewarding and very strange at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was just trying to think. There was another story. I'm just trying to remember. There was another one at our shul. Oh no! God, for the life of me, I forgot which story it was. I edit that one out. Can't remember what it was. If it comes to me, I'll tell you.
Okay, no
But
worries.
yeah, there are some funny stories. You know, it's like.
So now, like to sort of current affairs in South Africa, like you're the rabbi of a Jewish community, and you've got a hostile government, and people are questioning their future in South Africa. Like, where do you, how do you deal with this as a communal rabbi?
Look, your job as a rabbi is in order to strengthen everybody in the community and to be a source of strength.
Yeah.
And that means that when they come to shul, they want to hear words of encouragement. And when you deal with them privately, whether it's counseling, they need words of guidance and support and encouragement.
Yeah.
It's failed leadership to discourage and lower people's sense of security, you know, that's failed leadership. On the other hand, there's a mitzvah of making aliyah, and we have to try and promote it. I think it is the destiny of the Jewish people, and it is every person's opportunity to play a national role within Klal Yisrael. One of the biggest, you know, it's you read the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, and you see the criticism that they gave to the generation that remained in Bavel. You've got an opportunity now to go return back to the land of Israel and create a second Commonwealth. An enormous criticism for those people that didn't take up the opportunity. And I think in our times, the opportunity is even easier. They had to, the economy in Israel in the times of Ezra and Nehemiah was non-existent. The infrastructure was non-existent. Ezra made a whole bunch of decrees in order to create infrastructure.
Yeah.
And today, I'm not saying it's easy, God forbid, I don't want to fool yourself. And you have to be as realistic as possible and set up a person for success. But Eretz Yisrael has to be a vision for every Jew. So I say this also educationally, I think that it's crucial that Zionism is a very important ingredient in rabbinic education. In Klal Yisrael have to feel connected to their Zionist roots. Zionism is inseparable to Judaism.
And when you say Zionism, it's kind of a loaded term, and people have different connotations in their mind. Like, what is Zionism? What do you mean when you say Zionism?
Well, I think the support of Medinat Israel, the simple support of the appreciating the historical significance of the modern state of Israel and the role that it's playing for the people of Israel across the globe. And the history. What would have, Yehuda Avner wrote a whole book about what would have World War II look like?
The Ambassador, fabulous book.
If we had a state,
Highly recommended.
And that's true when you study Jewish history and you see it during the Inquisition and the pogroms, the Khmelnytsky massacre and the Kishinev massacres.
You don't need to go into history. You can look at like October 7th.
Yeah, right, Pidiyuk, 100%.
It's like without a Medinat Israel, like what would have happened after another massacre of Jews?
Yeah,
I mean, you take a look at what's already happening around the world with a Medinat Israel.
Right, 100% right. And I think I think that's crucial. I think for people not to appreciate the historical significance and the spiritual significance of the Medina, and I use that word, loaded, the Medina, I think is a deep spiritual failure. I think that it's an ignorance of their own history. I think people are chayav to learn Jewish history. People have to understand what the pogroms were about, and how many people know about the Kishinev massacre? How many people know about the Spanish Inquisition? The Spanish Inquisition lasted for...
it.
Yeah, it lasted for over...
You must know.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Yes.
I get that, that's true. And, it lasted for centuries.
Yeah.
It wasn't...
Yeah.
And the far-reaching, the long arm of the Inquisition reached all the way to India and South America.
Yeah.
It's like... And I think that it's a terrible fault in Jewish education not to appreciate Jewish history. And I think part of that is to appreciate the significance of the state and also the spiritual significance. We've got more boys and girls learning in yeshiva today than we've had in the history of the Jewish people. It's like, how do you underplay that? The Israeli army keeps kosher.
Yeah.
You want to ask for mahadran, they'll give you mahadran. You want a unit that davens Shachris Mincha Mariv, they'll provide you a unit.
Yeah.
It's like, of course there's issues, there's conflict, so nobody's denying the complications and the problems you're dealing with, personalities and egos and antagonism. Of course, you're always going to have that. But you can't run away from what we've achieved. So for me, that's crucial. Having said that, for a lot of people, they've got elderly parents. You tell them that what they can leave their elderly parents behind. That's not simple.
Yeah, not simple.
Yeah. And we've got people whose businesses, whose life here and everything, and not simple.
Yeah.
Life is not simple. Having said that, I think the South African Jewish community is off the chart in terms of what it's accomplished, considering its size. I don't know what the specific accurate numbers are, but I estimate somewhere between 30 to 35,000 Jews left in South Africa. And yet what we've created ourselves...
It really has shrunk.
Yeah, it has shrunk.
I remember when there were 120,000.
Yeah, that's right. In the late 70s, it was 120,000.
Yeah.
So it has shrunk, and yet it is outstanding in terms of what the community has achieved for itself and for the wider community. With organized like Chevra Kadisha and the Gap and Hatzola and, like the Jewish Board of Education and the religious day schools, and it's like the shuls and the kashrut. It's like...
It's phenomenal.
It's phenomenal. Eruvim, and it's so easy to be a Jew, And
it's also, I think, important to distinguish between the political echelon and the people in the street.
Oh yeah.
By the way, this is one of the things.
Even on the political echelon, we have to remember that our rights are protected in this country. This is a democracy, and you can still take people to court, and we have for anti-Semitic diatribe and. The police is on our side. If there's an anti-Semitic event,
is that right?
Oh yeah, the police rarely roll up their sleeves.
That's interesting because, what you typically find in other parts of the world is that offences against Jews are kind of who cares we're seeing that in Australia, in the UK.
Here it's taken seriously. Our cops are,
and that's very interesting when you've got a hostile government. That I think that your average man in the street honestly does not share the political views of the at least the foreign affairs views of the government.
No, the ANC do not represent the people of South Africa, not by a long shot. The average man on the street, black or white, are God-fearing, family-focused. Community
and yet you still have a plurality. It's not a majority now, but there's still a plurality of people who voting ANC.
Although the numbers have dwindled and they've felt the bite.
Yeah.
But having said that, I think the majority of South Africans are the most hospitable, kind.
And this is something that always strikes me every time I come to South Africa. It's like everyone in the street greets you, asks you how you are.
Unbelievable.
I in the airport. I was pushing my trolley and I was like trying to organize an Uber from the airport, and I wasn't watching where I was going, and I nearly bumped into somebody in front of me. I stopped. Oops, I'm sorry. And like they were also busy on their phone. I turned around and said, "What happened? Oh, you nearly hit me. Oh, no, don't worry, you didn't hit me. It's all fine." And then there's this. And where have you just come from? I come from Israel. Oh, yeah, that's nice. Where you? So how long are you here for? The whole conversation. You made random stranger who I nearly ran into with a trolley just because we happened to arrive on the same
time. The other day I was walking to Shul on Mincha for Shabbos Mincha, for Mincha and Suda Shlishit, and I walk past my Shul, and this car slows down next to me, and this random oak, middle-aged guy, rolls down, he says, "Hello." So I thought maybe he's asking for directions or something, So he says to me, "I just want to tell you, you're not alone. Viva la Israel." What guy? He says, "You're not alone. We've got your back. You're not alone," and he drives off. Sees my yami and tzitzis,
I had a similar experience on a previous visit. I was like just walking down the road to Shul, walked past a group of 4 black guys who were just sitting and shooting the breeze, and they're saying, "Yeah, you Jewish people," and so we love Israel. And I said, "No, that's great. I'm actually from Israel." "Oh, I want to come to Israel." It's like, and they're just full of love and
absolutely. And I think it's like a remarkable thing, I think South Africans still are very Christian. They God-fearing Christians, and they're very community-centered. I think it's in African culture to be tribal, communal.
That's probably the biggest injustice that apartheid did. It broke that.
Yeah, that's totally 100% right. And there's such a beautiful culture of community and village, where everybody takes care of each other, that Ubuntu sense of responsibility for each other. The ANC certainly don't represent those values, which is a huge tragedy. And so on the other hand, we've got, Jewish education in this country. You've got a King David school system, where the majority of the kids are still not religious, and yet they're getting an Orthodox education. The content is purely Orthodox. We're one of the few Jewish day schools in the world where non-religious children attend a Jewish day schools whose content is entirely Orthodox. And there are Orthodox Rabbonim who are running the school, who the head of the Jewish board, not a small thing, who the head of the Jewish Board of Education is a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi. It's like, and it filters down, where tefillah is part of the day. And the Chagim are focused, and Yom Ha'atzmaut is focused, and strong Jewish Zionist values are inculcated. That's unbelievable. It's a truly remarkable thing. And it's so in that way, the South African Jewish community is irreplaceable. And we have, to the enormous credit of our chief rabbi, we have an annual rabbinic conference, 3 days a year, where all the Rabbonim, I always call it the Wizards Conference. It's like, for me it's great because you're surrounded by your mates, and it's all fun, and part of it is social as well, and to break barriers. And all these beards get together in and it's all, it's like around August time, and we all get together, and there's opportunity to bond, but we bash out communal matters and concerns and projects and ideas, and we have guest speakers and big poskim, and we have opportunity. We've had privilege of having wonderful speakers, and one of the most amazing things that comes out of these conferences is the incredible chavashaft that's created by the rabbinic community.
The word
chavashaft is brotherliness. It's friendship, but it's sense of community amongst the Rabbonim. And here you are sitting in a circle of Rabbonim with Chabad, Mizrahi, Haredi, different Hasidic sects, and everybody's sitting around together, and they're all working together to deal with a common problem of assimilation, intermarriage, education, fundraising.
And that's almost a uniquely South African phenomenon, is that
unbelievable.
Everyone is on the same page.
All on the same page. And they're all friends. They're all friends. And when I want a guest, and I've got a typical communal Lithuanian type shul, if I want a guest speaker, I have no compunction phoning up one of the Lubavitch Rabbonim and say, come speak to us on Sunday morning or spend Shabbos with us as a guest, and they would do the same with me.
you know, before I made Aliyah, I mean, I was aware that there were, you know, there was Hasidim and there were, you know, I'd been exposed to Chabad and I saw that they'd been different. And, you know, I saw that there were some people who said, you know, who like, you know, who wore black kippot and some people wore an innocent kippot. And I thought, oh, okay, well, you know, it's just the fashion choice, you know. I actually had no idea that there was a political split until I got to Israel. And like, and
South Africa,
like, what?
Yeah. Are you really? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You know, like we're all on the same page and we're all serving the same people.
Yeah.
We're serving Klal Yisrael.
Yeah.
And here you taste it. It's very palpable. And it's so beautiful to have that friendship and that support and the Beis Din. Our Beis Din is so involved in the lives of people on a very grounded, real basis. You know, and they community rabbonim. They really understand the needs of the people financially, emotionally, marriage. Like, and it's just so in that way, our community is unmatched.
And I think it's also, I think there's another one of the places where Rabbi Gold finds that Tzal had like such a profound impact is he created homegrown rabbonim.
Yes.
I think that was also a very big shift.
Yeah.
That
Our chief rabbi is a perfect example of
Yeah.
that. Yeah, homegrown rabbonim where people understand the accent and they can talk about cricket. And they
the British ones could also talk about cricket.
yeah, that's true. That's true. I remember the late Chief Rabbi Harris. Do you remember?
Oh yes.
Rabbi Harris, he said once,
He was
he's
wonderful.
Wonderful man, and he said once that he got his first rabbinic post in at Lord's. He says, and his first talk that he gave at the Shul of Lords, he says, I've come to bring myself closer to Lords and bring you closer to the Lord.
That's a very Rabbi Harris kind of a joke.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that is true. And and understanding the culture, understanding the history, understanding the apartheid background and its ramifications, understanding the culture, and relating to people. You know, I think it's very important that the community feels like he's not an outsider, you know, it's like he gets me.
Yeah. And
the youth especially.
And like as mentioning the chief rabbi is like and what you said earlier about the fact that, you know, South Africa is actually a democracy and we do have rule of law, which is like why when like I hear the chief rabbi going on fire. Wow. Oh my gosh, he does not hold back when he tears into the president and the ANC and like I actually like I almost feel like I fear for his life.
Yeah.
Because he's like he's taking he's grabbing the bull by the horns and
imagine telling his Bobas and Zaydas. You know, could they speak like that about the Russian about the communist
you say something like
government
that?
like that?
You say something like that. I mean, even in America, you say something like that. They'll you know lawfare you to
and they revere him, they respect him. He's also earned his way in. You know, he's not a stranger to the political system.
Yeah,
he's earned the admiration of the wider community.
Right.
So when somebody who's earned their way to the wider community, who's come from the ranks, when he speaks, they take him seriously. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And that's crucial. And he speaks the truth.
I was watching him at the inauguration of the GNU, the Government of National Unity, and he was standing there, but like everything, he didn't say anything that was overtly confrontational, but my word, he was sticking it to them every step along the way by inference. Yeah. But just like the most subtle, you know, the all the quotes about, you know, those who bless you, I will bless, and it's like
and the God of Israel, and
and wow, how did he get invited?
And yet it's such a tiny community. That's the ridiculous thing.
Oh my! I just have to I have such admiration for him.
Absolutely, and the religious leaders in the community. You know, it's a remarkable thing. I was asked to be on a TV show, Afrikaans TV show, with a panel of a Muslim leader and a Christian leader and myself, and we spoke about South Africa. religion within South Africa community.
Right.
And the three of us had a blast. I mean, it was so wonderful to talk. You know, we actually shared phone numbers afterwards.
Right. So now that's an interesting thing. Because, like, you know, the perception that you know, as an outsider, and based on, again, media is very misleading, but you get the feeling that the Muslim community, at least the Muslim communal leaders, are just like painted a target on the Jewish community.
Look, I think that ever since the 7th of October, things have changed.
Yeah.
This was long before the 7th of October. But there was this great energy between the three of us. And
have you been in touch with this?
No, I've lost touch with them, but it was lovely. But it was great to talk and speaking about our shared concerns and our shared needs, and you know, and it was really wonderful. Today, unfortunately, things are different. Yeah, the prospects of trying to resolve that, I don't know. And yet, statistically speaking, South Africa's incidence of violent anti-Semitism is one of the lowest in the world.
Right.
So, you know. So it's South Africa's a funny place.
And importantly, you're saying that the police take this stuff seriously.
They do take it seriously.
Even though the police, on the other hand, are not known for their competence at most things.
Well, I think I don't know how the hierarchy and the layers of the police works, but when you're dealing with detectives and you're dealing with higher up officers of, you know, crime, and you know. Did
I ever tell you what happened after I was carjacked?
When you got shot?
No, it was my friend who got shot. But the second time. This is when my oldest daughter was a day old.
Oh, wow.
My wife was still in the nursing home with the baby. And so, without going into the details of the carjacking, I got carjacked. The guy took my car off me, and so I ran back into the house. I just come out from shul at Rabbi Isaacson's. That's how, and so he like took care of me and whatever. I gave me a phone. I called the police immediately and told them, you know, you're going, you know, my car's registration description, which direction it was driving in, where from, everything I could give them in as much as I could to, you know, give them a chance. So anyway, they took my cell phone as well, and so I gave them my parents' home phone number, and Rabbi Isaacson gave me a ride to my parents. And so while I was busy debriefing with them, the phone rings, and my mum takes it, and she says it's the police. They want to speak to you. I said, wow, they actually like had some success or something, or what's that? What do they want to report? So like pick up the phone. Hello, is this Mr. Beer?
Mr. Beer.
Yeah. Did you report a car hijacking in Harlands North? Yeah, I did. Yeah, we went to the address that you said, and there was nothing there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like really. That's amazing. Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, yes. Well, you know, the criminal always returns to the scene of the crime, and we wanted to be there.
Yes. Because he may have left his wallet behind, or, you know, maybe that's where he lives, or like.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. Yeah. Okay. So I think you're dealing with a different strata of police when it comes to like that kind of crime, and they've been very supportive.
Have there been arrests made?
That I don't know. You probably have to speak to the CSO.
Yeah.
That's another amazing institution that we've created.
Yeah, CSO.
The CSO, for a tiny community, we've got an incredibly effective CSO. You know.
I guess that's one of the benefits of having a highly defective government, is that you privatize all the functions of government. And,
absolutely.
And actually things really get done well.
Yeah, because as soon as it's privatized, you know, people are motivated. It's the power of the free market.
Yeah, and unfortunately they don't give you a discount on your taxes for it.
No, they should. They should. Yeah. I mean, today I don't know how many people here in this area, Jews or non-Jews, would think about phoning the police if there was a matter of crime. They would phone GAP first and foremost.
Yeah. You want a quick response? You phone GAP. Yeah.
I had an incident many years ago when I was in Gallo Manor. I had 3 visitors in my garden in the middle of the night. phoned the police multiple times. They just didn't bother coming.
And this was before the days of CAP?
Before the days of CAP. We had coin or something. Eventually they came. But useless. But by then they managed to run away. But it was just like astounding. We phoned the police multiple times. They just didn't bother coming.
Yeah.
And neighbours were phoning as well, because these oaks were hopping from one house to the next. So the neighbours were calling. So imagine the police station getting multiple calls from multiple neighbours.
Yeah.
You know, of the same three bandits who are going from...
you're on a roof.
Yeah, no, let me finish this round of Candy Crush. You know, it's like, for goodness sake. It's like, it's astounding. But that's the power of the free market. Yeah. I think I don't know what the numbers are of private security guards on the street per policeman. I think it's one of the highest in the world.
I'm sure.
You know.
I'm sure, because when you've got like that sort of rampant crime and people who can afford to pay for private security,
they'll take it.
That'll happen. It's not just that; it's like potholes.
Yeah.
And Discovery walks in and says, "Okay, if you won't do it, we're sick of paying insurance for everyone breaking their axles."
Yeah, and then there was some naughty kids would spray painting a phallic symbol over the potholes.
Oh my.
To get attention. And then so all of a sudden now we've got attention. So
why did they care?
Yeah, and they told people now the government steps up and they said it's a crime to deface public property.
It's a crime to deface potholes. Our potholes are our national heritage.
Just tourist site. And I was thinking, like, that kid, whoever he is, bloody clever. Because if there's any way to get attention to these potholes.
It worked. Yeah.
It worked. And so, this people are creative when finding solutions.
Yeah.
So,
where do you see the community going in 5-10 years? What's going to happen? I mean, obviously, futurism is a very.
I'll tell you that the numbers of Aliyah. My wife works at the Aliyah department in South Africa, and the numbers of Aliyah people who are opening up files for Aliyah or reopening old files that we're collecting dust ever since 2024. I think is the highest numbers they've had in years.
2024,
2024 was the highest numbers
after October 7th.
Which is remarkable, and considering
this is Jews. When there's danger, we run towards it. And especially considering the demographics, meaning that we're only 35,000 Jews left in South Africa, not 120,000 it was once. Yeah.
And yet there are more people making Aliyah today.
Right,
than
which
there were
of course
before.
is going to leave a big...
So the brain drain is a serious issue in South Africa. And I think that the more that continues, you know, Jews like to go to Jewish doctors and Jewish dentists and Jewish lawyers, and you know, understandably so. So I'm no prophet of the future. I don't know. I think a lot of it depends on the stability of the economy of the country, and the government can have an enormous sway on that, for the good or for the bad. And I think that will either increase or slow down the numbers of people making Aliyah.
Yeah.
But look, I think the future for South African Jewry has got a beautiful place here.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful community.
It's almost a tragedy to
lose such a place. It really is. I know friends and family.
As much as Chutzlar, it's in its nature for Jewish people in Gullis, it's temporary, no matter where it is, whether you're talking about Spain or America or South Africa.
Not home.
It's not home.
One home for a Jew.
Right.
And I think that, you know, I mean, I've got friends and family from all over the world, and they'll say that the South African Jewish community is irreplaceable. They'll never find anything like it. You know, whether they come to Melbourne or Toronto or, you know, New York or wherever they may go, London, they'll say that the Warmkeit, the warmth and the Heimischkeit that they find out of the South African Jewish community is unmatched.
Yeah.
But it's slowing down. The communities, you know, and financially it's slowing down. You know, you've got this enormous drain on the wealth that's remained to support, but that people do it generously. You know, and as hard as it is, for example, when lockdown, COVID happened, and everybody financially had to tighten their belt, because everybody's finances were affected. The Chevra Kadisha was saying that people have increased their donations to the Chevra Kadisha. Not decreased, increased. I mean, that's like, if that's not a Kiddush Hashem, like...
But this is, I think this is one of the superpowers of Am Yisrael. Is that, we come through adversity and turn it into something incredible. The story, I think of all the October 7 stories. There's one that, there's so many of them, but one of them that comes to mind right now is I don't know if you heard this one about. There was a jeweler, professional jeweler, our generation, and his son. His son was about to get engaged, and he'd asked his father to make a ring for him to give to his girlfriend. And on October 7th, I don't know if the son was killed on October 7th or he was a soldier who went into battle. I don't remember the exact details, but it's not important. But the son fell in October 7 related aftermath, and the father. Got up from his shiva, and he's still holding on to this ring, and he put out a message to say, look, the first soldier who comes out of Gaza wants to get engaged, contact me, I've got a ring for him. Okay, so a day later, soldier contacts him, gives him the ring, wishes him mazel tov. Next day, another soldier contacts him and says, is the ring still available? Father says, yes, it is. And he makes another ring for him. So it goes on. I don't know the exact number, somebody can correct me, but I think it was over 70 rings that he just made and gave free to any soldier who came out of Gaza.
Unbelievable. The stories you're hearing of restaurants
unbelievable. But this is the superpower of Am Yisrael is like to go through an October 7th, to go through a Shoah and come out and build a Medinat Yisrael, like this ragtag band of people who'd crawled out of Auschwitz, and pick up little sticks and like little whatever guns that they could scramble together, and they built a state.
Yeah, they say the number of marriages and births in the displaced person camps after the war was off the chart.
That's us. It's
people wanted to rebuild.
We just can't. We will not die.
Yeah.
We will not lie down. We will, and the worst things in the world can happen to us, and we'll take it and turn it around.
Yeah,
and
that's the koch of Am Yisrael.
Okay. Yeah, the thing is, it's a good time to wrap up anyway.
Okay.
But it's been
fabulous.
It's been an amazing chat. This has
been wonderful.
Brilliant.
We can certainly carry it on.
We could go on for ages, but I'm going to test our listeners' stamina
to listen to our.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's wonderful. It's so lekker.
Sure. Thank you so much. It's so good to see you again.
So nice.
And
so special.
Beautiful to catch up with you again.
Please God.
Hatzlacha, Rabbi.
And to you as well, and all your amazing work.
Thank you.
And your family you're the first Zayda in our group.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
It's a great title. We finally have to respect you. You finally earned our respect.
Which I didn't have before.
Yes. Clearly. Wonderful.
Thanks, man.
Shkoch Puti.
Hakol Sababa, where life takes a spin. Join the fun, let the talk begin. Hakol Sababa, where life takes a spin. Join the fun, let the talk begin.